Thank you for watching Fireside. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when future episodes release. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fireside. Today, we have yet another OSRS legend in our figurative studio, someone known for their old school RuneScape PvM prowess, their record-setting achievements, and their beloved guides. A streamer, a YouTube content creator, opinion haver, opinion giver, and Cersei cosplayer. Gnomonkey, welcome to Fireside.
That GM.
There we go. How's it going?
It's going all right.
Sweet. I know we're recording right now just a couple days before League starts, so maybe we can just quickly hear your thoughts. What's just your general take on League 6? I know they're making some pretty big changes to the combat stuff, so you're the perfect person to ask.
I think it's pretty cool. I like the complicated build they're trying. I know a lot of people are like they're just copying PoE or whatever, but I think it is cool to have some more complicated choices going on with leagues. I think it's pretty neat.
It feels very much like what I wanted leagues to be, because it feels like an ARPG season. If anyone's ever played like PoE, Last Epoch, whatever, this leagues has always kind of felt like that from what I understand. And this will be my second one, and now I'm seeing a giant talent tree. And I remember talking to I think it was Arcane, way back when, months and months ago, where I'm like, I would like to see you guys do a talent tree in the next league or something along that ARPG route, and now they're doing it. Not to say that I take credit for it. Yeah, I'm like, that's super exciting, honestly, and so many different builds. Hopefully they all work out. I know we're kind of predicting things right now, so are you you're running a melee build?
Yeah, I have a weird blind bag thing rigged up with doing range damage from range, that kind of thing. I've used a few points in Mage to get super fast powered stabs as well. So, but the plan is go chambers and have access to I'll be ranging with melee for the mobs that take that, and then I'll be able to Mage still, but mostly melee.
Very cool. So what are the current region choices you're planning? Obviously, everything can change in the next day or two, but
I'm doing Zaya, Mori, Asgardian. I just want 2 raids. It just sounds like fun.
Yep, very very reasonable. I'm going Zaya, Korend, whatever. Korend, Asgardian, Kandarin, because I'm doing a Spellblade hybrid build where I use the Serb Dagger and water spells simultaneously, in that it procs the damage to me from the fire tree, and then I can use water spells to overheal and then proc the overheal damage node, which none of the calcs work right now. I've been doing a lot of napkin math on the side to see if it can work out, but it looks pretty fun. And you can get Torva and stuff with that set too, so it's chill.
Yeah, I've been trying to rough mental math. I'm just big numbers.
Yeah. I know there's just so many issues with the calc right now, so only time will tell, honestly, with how everything is received, but I'm very excited for it. But I want to keep the Lee's convo short because we're only predicting the future, and this might not age well. So maybe everyone hates it in 2 weeks. So instead, we can go with more general conversations. I know I've been asked so much to have you on because obviously, I talk a lot about the game, and I just released a video about the difficulty in the game. You're a great person to talk about that with. So I just have so many things to ask and hear your thoughts on. So we can just start off immediately with the new player experience, right? You have so much experience with old school RuneScape as a high level player. I know you don't put yourself up there with the Port Khazards, but you're definitely in the 0.5% of that space, I would say, easily. I would love to hear your thoughts on the general path someone takes as a brand new player, those new WoW players that came in a few months back, from no PvM experience to mediocre PvM to getting Blood Torva. What does that look like? What are the pitfalls there? I know it's kind of a vague question, but
I know with me, there wasn't as much content when I was learning. So I did a lot of Vorkath. That was my first boss, and then CG, and then jumping straight into Tob. So there wasn't quite as many things in between difficulty. It was kind of just there was a smattering of stuff, and it's just kind of figured out jump in head first. I do feel now there's a lot of gap filler bosses. Yama's kind of in between, not super hard, but it teaches you stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they've been adding a lot of early and mid game content to kind of pad out those growing pains, I guess you could say. I'm sorry, I cut you off there, but when did you start playing the game? I know you said like maybe like half a decade ago.
I remember I saw the login screen and it said the like thing for Fossil Island was coming up next week. I think that's
2018,
2017.
2017. Yeah, okay.
18? Yeah.
Yeah, so somewhere I'm just going off my wiki knowledge here because I started playing in 2024, so I'm much
Yeah,
newer in
yeah.
that regard. Yeah, but I picked a great time to start playing, honestly. Not just because the game has obviously grown since I started, but also it was like the release of Varlamore. I think Varlamore released like a month or two, the first part, when I started playing with my buddy as a group Iron Man. And I was remember watching all the streams of like you, Mulgoat, all the people pushing for the world first Coliseum clear. So that was a great time to start because there's so much content just immediately kind of flooded into the game, you know?
Oh yeah.
How do you feel about Varlamore in general now that it's fully released?
There's a lot of really good content. So like a lot of the more recent high level stuff like Coliseum, I guess it's not that recent anymore, but Coliseum, Yama, Mocha, I would feel like is solid, but I have like some gripes with everything. Like Coliseum has the invos that like nobody likes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mocha has a handful of issues, like the drop table I feel like is kind of weird with like the common loot, the way it works doesn't work super well. Yama, I feel like the oath plate is like too accessible and like too strong. So I have like some gripes with everything, but overall the like bosses themselves are like really, really solid and I really, really enjoy them.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of those specifics as well. I'm excited to hear your thoughts and share mine as well, and we can kind of have a conversation about those. So when it comes to like, essentially, you're saying it's much easier today as a new player or someone just who maybe you've been playing for 10 years but have never done the PVM, because I know it can be a bit daunting for people. It's easier today to kind of pick up and just like incrementally increase your skill through all the content that exists today.
Yeah, not only is there like good like stepping stone content to everything, there's also like insanely good tools. I was talking about this on stream the other day. Like we were using a Google spreadsheet for DPS calcs for like years. That was like the go-to.
Yeah.
So now we have like all these websites that does everything for you. We have simulators on everything. Like the tools and like the player base have like grown a lot, and it's a lot easier to like jump into stuff.
Yeah, it sounds bad, but like the sim tools that you guys have in OSRS, I come from the WoW scene, specifically in like a pretty semi-hardcore, like, the mythic raiding space, which is kind of like the hardest PVM in WoW would be that. And I come from that space, and we use sims for absolutely everything. So coming into OSRS, I'm like, are they going to have stuff like that? It's kind of weirder to calculate that kind of stuff. But no, as soon as I saw the wiki calc as well as the other one, which I'm forgetting the name of, the more complicated one that you use more often.
Yeah, Gearscape.
Gearscape, yeah. I'm like, oh, perfect. And now I just live in those to figure out everything that I need to know about my setup. If there's any like gaps that you see right now in someone's like PVM progression or journey, or do you see any gaps there? If so, where are they? Where are some soft spots or some issues?
Like learning gaps.
Yeah,
I think we've got some good like lower level bosses. Like Scurious teaches prayer switching really well, and like movement, like dodging rocks, like very simple, straightforward. And then
Mhm.
like um, Titans has good stuff with like basic gear switches, that kind of thing. So they have
Yep.
like that covered with those bosses at a very early level. Trying to think like big missing gaps. I would say the thing I would like to see more is like learning your weapon timer. Um, like the big thing I see people struggle with still, like when they get into the top, is like getting bounced over and over on P2 and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I wish at Moons, like the Jaguars at Blood Moon, I wish that was the same exact timing as like P2 to like teach you that. But I wish there were more bosses that were like it punishes you if you're next to the boss when he doesn't attack, and like but maybe less punishing than like Tob. I feel like that's a struggle for a lot of people, and why they like say Tob is like impossible because like they struggle with that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that I had a conversation with Seibe on the Seicast a while back, and he pointed out that the highest skill ceiling, or not the highest skill ceiling, one of the hardest things, I guess, would be the more accurate way to put it. One of the hardest things for new players to learn is how to kind of prioritize or maximize their output based on like their weapons attack speed. So the blowpipe is one of the hardest weapons in the game to use well in like an intense PVM scenario because it's two tick. So you're losing so much damage if you're just kind of running around like with a like a chicken with your head cut off. And with that in mind, like I feel like understanding weapon attack timers I always tell my friends, some of my friends who are much newer to the game or just starting to like really get into it, that like the biggest thing you can do as a new player is stop losing DPS by just not attacking or like prioritizing something else. Like
Hmm.
always make sure you're attacking, even when you're like brewing and your stats are low. Just keep attacking. Like you don't have to stop. You know, that's a big thing on Nex as well, which I recently kind of dipped my toes into. That's a great point. I know that there's a plugin I use still. It's a crutch, where it's like a bar that depletes under your health bar that kind of shows your attack timer on any individual weapon you have. It's so insanely powerful and good. I get like every one of my videos, I have like 10 comments asking me what that plugin is. And I almost to the point where I'm like, I wonder if Jagex should consider creating like in-game ways to track weapon attack speeds, or would that maybe like be too much help? Or I don't know what your opinion is on like
I
alleviating
think it
the.
would be super useful. I don't need that. That plugin came out after I had a like thorough understanding of like attack timers, so I don't use it. But like when I make guides, I will like throw it on to make it more obvious, like that I'm like shooting full uptime and that kind of thing. It is super super helpful, and I think it really teaches you really well like what your attack cooldowns are.
Yeah,
Maybe an in-game timer would be cool. I don't know exactly how they implement it, but
yeah, I feel like it's something cleaner, right? I always say that like plugins are awesome, but when like everybody, it's like it becomes ubiquitous. I rather just Jagex take a swing at implementing it into the main game in like a cleaner, more like plugins are often very utilitarian in the way they look, and I feel like you could implement them in a cleaner, more like visually cohesive way if Jagex could just take a swing at it. And I feel like plugins like this just kind of would maybe help the average player. Like for me, I use it even though I probably don't need it for like 90% of the content I do now because I've done so much of the content in the game, but I still use it because it's just like a second nature thing for me. It's like I'm used to seeing it on my screen if I'm ever curious about something. That's a really important thing. And I guess we can also touch on how PvM in general is very much buoyed up by plugins. They're kind of like add-ons would be in WoW. Do you have any general thoughts on plugins as like a concept, as like a top-end player who does use plugins as well? Do you feel like there are issues there? Do you feel like they feel a perfect niche, too little, too much?
I am always like very pro plugging compared to most other people. A lot of like the really good players are more like veteran and they were used to like playing the game without like any plugins whatsoever. So I think that's mainly because I'm like a new-ish player compared to them. Like I've always been using plugins since I started playing. So
Yeah,
um, I think they really fill the gap when Jagex fails. Like when there's a really bad visual or audio cue, like plugins can come in and make that better. Like the animation replacer, I think it's called, plugin that like makes the projectiles on bosses have like you can replace it with a different boss's projectile. Like you make it really obvious. Like at SOT, you can make all the
yeah.
balls super super obvious what they're doing,
Like the
like that
Leviathan
kind of
ones,
thing.
right? Did they become the
Yes,
Leviathan ones? Yeah, yeah. That's a really
yeah.
interesting one
Anything
because
that's
it's
like improving a cue that just makes it more obvious what you're supposed to do, but isn't doing it for you. I think that kind of thing is super nice.
yeah, no, 100%. And that's actually a perfect segue into the way. So, plugins obviously alleviate some design issues. They make bosses easier as well. They help you like have visual reminders of where to go or how to do a mechanic. But they're obviously a bit more restrictive than what I would be used to in like WoW, where you get all kinds of countdowns and all this kind of stuff for certain mechanics. So, with that in mind, boss design difficulty, like there is a lot of community conversation. I think you inhabit one side of things, maybe other people in the community inhabit a different side of things. There's a lot of conversation about specifically boss difficulty. How hard should an end game boss be? I have a lot of thoughts on Yama as well as you do. Like to you, right? A boss that drops a Yama tier loot table, which is essentially the horn is whatever the three armor pieces. Um, how hard realistically should that boss be?
Yeah, see that's the thing with difficulty. It's like I don't care if a boss is easier or harder. Like that does not matter to me. Like Chambers is not super difficult, but it's so fun. It's so deep. The mechanics are so interesting, right?
Mhm.
Like the difficulty on paper doesn't matter until you tie it to the drops. When it's dropping you like insanely good items, that's when like the difficulty has to match. So yeah, I don't know. I think I've said a lot of stuff about Yama. I'm not sure what they need to do there or what they should have done. It's like either the armor should have been like very, very rare and it should be like a long grind, which people don't like, which is why they didn't do that. Or like it should have been harder. I don't know. The drops from Yama, the issue is Nex is a much harder boss and drops Torva, which is worse armor, like objectively. Like you're going to use Oathplate much more often than you use Torva. So it just doesn't fit correctly into the game. Like the game's ecosystem does not fit that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that it's something I've always been thinking about a lot. On one hand, I don't mind, I think I have like 1,300 or 1,400 Yama kills. I went really dry on Oathplate. It was awful, but I love the fight. I love the fight. And obviously Oathplate is super, super powerful. So I'm not like upset over that fact, but I'm generally in the camp that like a 60 to 100 hour grind, Yama I think is more like 80 or something around there. That's like okay. You could argue that like for literally armor that's so cannibalistic to Torva, and we can talk more about why that is, and I have a lot of opinions on that as well, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. But like general difficulty as well to me, like Yama, especially in duos, is really like doable. Like you could just kind of do it whenever, really, especially even in just mid game in duos, frankly. And what I find interesting about that, and just the general conversation that I've been thinking about, is it feels to me like from the outlier or outside maybe looking in, it feels like today it's almost a little bit harder to make a super hard boss that most people can just enter and do, right? Like to me, like Chambers of Xeric, half the difficulty of Chambers, like we're not talking about depth, just like immediate difficulty, is just like seeing the mechanic that's happening in that like it's just kind of a little bit obtuse, a little bit unintuitive in some ways. You're like, how do you skip the head? Like why does that even work this way? Like it requires a level of like pre-existing knowledge or developing knowledge that is like a huge barrier for some players that might be used to like TOA mechanics, which is like, oh, there's a colored ball, you pray against it. There's a thing on the ground, you move away from it. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of like
it's more subtle.
Yeah, it's like emergent mechanics are really like the core, and in TOB the same thing. And those, I think a lot of players that are on the top end like you and many others really value those because they add so much more min-maxing and depth to the game. And for new players, it might feel a little bit more like of a hurdle to jump over. So now we have bosses that are more like intuitive visually, but also in some ways feel a little bit easier. Am I maybe wrong in thinking that?
Yeah, I don't know if easier is the right word.
Yeah,
I think you're right there, where it's like more straightforward. Like it's like Toa has very clear mechanics, but like the thing you see in Toa is like because the mechanics are like very clear charging bars and like very big winding up attacks that like when you get hit by them, they have to just like one shot you.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Whereas like in Chambers, it's like losing to Ulm is like a slow like getting stacked over and over. Like, oh, I fell out of cycle. Oh, he gave me a flame wall. Oh, he gave me a burn. Like it starts like draining your supplies, and then it's like, okay, now I'm dead.
Yeah, a part of this to me is also, and I know we're getting kind of in the nitty gritty here, but like it's part of the end result of removing like chip damage and just general, or even not even chip damage, like the Jad damage, whatever you want to call it, from like Ulm and Zulrah, where they can just hit you off prayer and you can't really do much about it other than maybe predict it. And removing that side of the game that manages player supplies means that people can essentially start min-maxing in a way to never drain their supplies if they're playing really well. And that kind of creates I feel like a difficulty in balancing some content, right? Because people on the top end can essentially go lossless. People on the bottom end, and because the mechanics become so punishing, because you want the people on the top end to still struggle and get punished if they do mess up, the people on the bottom end might struggle there because now they're having more challenging mechanics that are more punishing, but also need to go lossless like on the top end to kind of compete with those players. I don't know if that made any sense, but like the what I'm trying to say is that obviously we have even TOA after the changes last summer, like chip damage is so much less. There's so much less like inherent supply use in modern combat encounters. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like I'm off base here?
No, 100%. I think a lot of people get lost in the weeds on chip damage because they see like Baba and they're like, oh, that was bad. And yes, it was bad. Like Baba hitting you 20 through prayers does not feel fun, and there's no real counterplay to that besides just not get hit at all. But a boss like Verzik P3 is like one of the best bosses in Tob, and it constantly chips you. That's the whole point of like the last boss in Tob, is like it's the one boss that you save your supplies for because it's going to like take them. And then it gives you room with the different special attacks to like heal back up. Like it does the yellow tiles. That's a chance to like full brew back to full right before you like get back in there. So like I think Kieran has talked about this a lot, like trying to give the player like downtime, like on purpose to give them time to like recover, that kind of thing. You just don't have any of that in a boss where you take absolutely no damage. And then like if you take no damage, the best players don't take food. You just take full inventories of gear. Like you'll see it in like CM, like when I speedrun CM, I'll bring literally no brew in, like none whatsoever. Like it's just all gear. So, which can be, I mean, that can be okay, but a big part of like PvM is the like supply management. Like, what exactly do I need to get through this, and like figuring out like what you need, and then like what kind of gear you can bring. Is this gear piece worth more than a brew to me? Like that kind of thing. And then also in the moment, like safe times to recover that won't like lose me damage. Like there's so many times when a boss has downtime, you're like, okay, this is the opportunity to heal, or I'm not losing damage. Like Vorkath is really good for this. Like when he does the acid phase, he takes half damage, right? So that's a great time to heal. Like you're only doing half damage, so like you might as well heal then. Or when he shoots out the zombified spawn, you're stuck in place until that thing like appears. Like that's a chance to eat food, that kind of thing. You just totally lose that in Toa. Like that's just not a thing like ever. You're just like you get almost one shot, you spam brew to get back to full, and then you keep fighting the boss, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely an aspect of like gameplay that's lost, I feel like, in modern content.
Ulm intermission obviously is a big one there as well, where you're just
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, and I've always been honestly, and much to the I think chagrin of a lot of people who watch my videos. I've always been kind of a defender of chip damage to a certain extent. I think it works really well as like a balancing factor to supply use, but also similarly opens up a lot of opportunities for itemization that just don't exist in the game. So as someone who's kind of started obviously very early game, like just completely fresh faced, stupid 2 years ago, or a bit under 2 years ago, and now Inferno, Coliseum, all that stuff done. Like some of my biggest points of criticism about the game's progression, which I think is generally amazing, is actually in the end game. There's so many problems to me with end game itemization and the way it cannibalizes it, specifically with the way it's started recently to cannibalize itself. I think I don't like seeing raids like TOB just continuously fall more and more out of relevancy outside of a single item, like the Scythe, which is always just going to scale. I think only having one of the rarest items in the entire game give all the value to a piece of content is just bad, frankly. I just don't like that. So it's like, and we'll get into that, but essentially what I'm saying is, I'm very critical, I think, toward some of the end game elements right now that exist, specifically with itemization. And I think chip damage gives opportunities for things like tank armor to potentially get a soft rework. Maybe tank armor becomes something that new players can use to mitigate chip damage instead of just RNG less damage taken sometimes. Where like, kind of like how Justisher works generally, but like, to most tank armor. Like you can have a flat damage reduction on some tank armor and create bosses that have chip damage that allow you to mitigate that if you're a newer player, and then like have an easier time on ramping into some of the more difficult mechanics. Like stuff like that to me opens up itemization, and I think OSRS in the top end, and I don't know how you feel about this, so feel free to completely disagree. That's totally fine. I feel like the top end itemization for OSRS feels so like binary. Like it's like everything just goes one way. In what kind of things you're bringing to a specific piece of content. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like tank armor in PvM, I feel like it's just never a thing. Like as a high level player, you're going to be
prioritizing damage. Yeah.
The only thing that encourages tank armor, there's two bosses. There's Moons, which lowers your damage when you get hit, and there's Vardorvis, which heals when he hits you. So that kind of thing can force you to care about defense, but it's never to the point where you're like, I'm gonna wear Justy. Usually, maybe at Moons, but Moons is lower level, so who can say? But like, generally, when a boss is like hitting you for chip damage, it's like, what kind of food am I bringing? That's like the big thought, and it's never like, what armor am I going to bring? At Verzik, having like, you don't bring a ton of brew because it's hard to eat brew quickly. Like you can't spam that super fast. So maybe you bring a couple hard food, and maybe at Zulrah, like combo eats are really important because the boss occasionally hits you 40s. So bringing like big combo food can be really, really nice. That kind of thing. So it's less you're less thinking about the defense normally, and you're more thinking about like the combo food. I think that's just the way defense works in RuneScape, where it's just dice rolls. Like even if you have 20,000 defense, like you still could get hit. It's not ever going to be consistent. So if they had flat armor at some point, maybe that'll be a thing. I have no idea how that would look like if we had flat armor on our armor. We'll see. I'm sure at some point that'll happen, but
My take on flat armor is, and I've been a huge proponent ever since I saw it, like, and I understood it a little bit more with like moons and all that kind of stuff. I've been a huge proponent to giving value to tank armor by just creating a flat armor system into the main game where every 100 defense of a specific defense type gives you one flat armor in that defense type. So if you have 100 crush defense, you have a flat one, you have one flat armor against crush attacks. Something like that. So if you have like a really good all-around tank set against melee damage, you can really buff the defenses up high on that, and then also have like a 4 or even a 5 flat armor on those, so that fully can mitigate certain bosses if they were to do chip damage again in any kind of sense. If you're getting hits for 4s and 5s constantly, you can, a new player I should say, can wear tank armor against them and just fully heal right through it. That's like, that would be my like take on it. I know RS3 actually has a completely different take on tank armor. Do you know how they do their stuff there?
I know it. I know at one point they had the flat armor. It was damage soaking, which was like I think kind of like WoW, where it's just like a % of the damage is like completely mitigated. And I know like tank armor has gone through like iterations where it's been like completely broken, and you would just always wear it. This is the thing with this kind of thing. It's never like, oh, do I want damage or do I want tank? It's usually just like when you have a system like this, and the flat armor is kind of like it doesn't care about the boss. They don't have a way to tune the balance. So if a boss attacks you really fast, like Thermi or something, that's really strong. If a boss attacks you really slowly, it's bad. So it's basically the attack speed. I feel like it would cause like really bad balancing issues down the line, but who knows? I don't know. We've never seen it in this game.
You're 100% correct. Like I feel like if anything, it would cause balance issues with the content that exists right now, because we're like full like going tanky on Nex, I feel would be pretty not awful if you had flat armor, like flat 6 against all of their attack, because you're just getting it so often. But I'm bad at Nex, so this could be just my take on it. But I also feel like, so in RS3, what armor, or what, at least to my knowledge, what tank armor does, I'm not like an RS3 pro by any means, is that it just increases your total health. It just
I think
flat
that's
increases,
I think that's the thing.
How would that look in OSRS? Do you ever feel like, would that ever work? I feel like that is also prone to just having some crazy issues.
I had someone suggest they give that to Torva, because that's what Torva did initially.
Yeah.
It was the first armor that did that. It just gave you max health. And they're like, well, Torva's bad. You're talking about how Oathblade is OP. Maybe we just give it the max health back.
How do you feel about that?
So the health is not that important, I feel like, in PvM, except for the fact it would make you heal more with brews. I think it did back in the day too. So like brew would heal like 2 more. And I guess they could make it not do that. Like brews healing more is insanely strong. That's like incredibly powerful. So like healing faster is like very, very strong. I feel like having extra max health is just not like a super useful stat though, probably. Maybe to like newer players it'd be like, oh, I'm getting KO'd less learning content. But like for me, I'm never like, oh, I need more max health. That would help me. I can't think of any fights where that's like a big deal.
Yeah, I think for me it's like I doubt I'd be using it where I'm at in the game right now, unless I'm drastically overestimating my my skills with some of the new upcoming content. But I think like tank armor to me, at least in RS3, from what I understand, inhabits a cheaper alternative for new players just learning a piece of content, and then they can slowly transition to more of like a, not, I don't want to say glass cannon, but the traditional power armor, strength bonus type gear. I feel like because Justicia is so cheap, like it's borderline worthless. So having like a really cheap alternative that has a use for new players coming into a piece of content could potentially maybe offset that, because obviously like Torva is incredibly expensive, Oathblade is fairly expensive. Meanwhile, like Justicia would be like 15 mil for the full set or 20 mil for the full set, and you're like, okay, it's not good. I'm not going to be min-maxing anything, but if they were to make tank armor better, this could be an on-ramp to something like a TOB. Obviously, this requires a lot of tuning. But that would be like my cheap alternative suggestion type shit.
Yeah, maybe. My concern too is always people like avoiding learning completely by
Yeah.
using this kind of thing. Like you see that with the mage tank stuff in Inferno. Like
Oh,
people
yeah.
just have no clue how to do the waves, but they're still getting capes.
I
So that's
I
always I think I'm conscious of. I don't know.
there was a very loud voice in the back of my head being like, just tank, just mage tank it, just mage tank, like for
Mhm.
Inferno when I was learning it, because I like a month or two ago I spent like a week in the Coliseum, and then like a couple days in Inferno. Coliseum just kind of made me much easier to do Inferno when you know how Coliseum works. And so I ended up not doing that. And also I knew that I was recording it. So if I'm making a video about, doing the Inferno, or speaking about myself doing Inferno, all my clips are just me face tanking the entire thing with full Justicia and the fucking, Eye of Ayak. Like that would not be a good look. I think I would be kind of laughed out of the room. So I wanted to take it a bit more seriously. Although I did bring a Justy helm. I had a Justy helm every so often. I had a full crystal, but I also had a Justy helm for when the first set Ranger Major spawned on Zuck when I was tanking the Ranger. Because
Yeah, gotcha.
who knows if that helped. But I think that and I think 12 attempts, 11 or 12 attempts was for Inferno for me. But I know Inferno has such a deep, like, you know, everything beyond just doing it for the first time. Like there's so much to min max in the Inferno. I know you're pretty positive about it. Like when you're comparing Coliseum and Inferno, you're generally a lot more in the Inferno camp of things, if I understand.
Yeah, Inferno's
Yeah.
my favorite content in the game. Period.
Oh, okay,
It's
cool.
insanely good. Yeah.
How do you feel about
Um.
I'm sorry. Go
No,
before
go
I
ahead.
ask my next question. No, go,
Oh,
go, go.
okay.
Yeah.
The I still learn things doing Inferno. I'm doing Inferno on my hardcore for like Slayer training, so it's like 125k per Slayer task to like do it. So it's like
Yeah.
really fast on an iron to train it through Inferno. And even on those, like, I have done hundreds of speedruns. I've died probably like 3,000 times in the Inferno. I've done so much Inferno. And even like going in on the hardcore, I still am like, oh, you know what? That setup is really cool. Like I'm gonna I'm gonna start using that. Like it's insane to still be like learning things in a piece of content that I've like utterly destroyed, you know?
Yeah, 100%. But also, I also feel like that's kind of one of the coolest parts about OSRS in general is how new and existing gear can synergize to create completely new like routes, right? For as much as I might like not want to do the mage tank build when I'm learning the Inferno, and for as much as you might argue that like it kind of undermines the content, there is a level of like just vague coolness to just having that kind of solution in such an open-ended game. Like most games, most MMOs would always pigeonhole the hardest content and balance it to never ever be scaled out or make it completely irrelevant, right? Like it very much feels like old school RuneScape is just a continuously growing puzzle, where we're finding new ways to essentially put it together faster. And you can argue that Mage Tank is maybe a bit OP, but there is something kind of novel to having that level of like variability in what's being added to the game and what exists in it, as you pointed out with all these new ways to do it. Like maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Perilous Moons was a really cool addition to so much different content because of ways it can manipulate the Inferno. Like Atlatl is a powerful, really early Inferno solve outside of like Zuck, which I know it's really inaccurate on, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Moons is a like PvM encounter I have a lot of issues with, but the gear and the options for like getting stuff earlier on an iron I think is really cool. I like the gear choices. Atlatl is really fun to mess with. Like
I
there's a
love
lot of ways
Atlatl.
to use that well.
I absolutely fucking love Atlatl. It's like my favorite thing ever. For as much as I don't like the way the Moon's gear looks, I fucking love it so much. And I really want to touch on Moons actually. I would love to hear your thoughts deeper on that. But before I do, I do want to ask the classic newbie Inferno question. And I'm sure I'll be lambasted for even asking this. But how do you feel about the length? I know that's kind of part of the difficulty, but the first 50 waves of Inferno you can min max them, but they're also just very slow. Especially the first like 30. And how do you, after doing God knows how much Inferno, I know you're probably very comfortable with that, but do you ever feel like the changes made in the Coliseum of just really shortening it and just emphasizing more of like an immediate ramp up in difficulty, potentially like was better game design? Or do you feel like maybe the longevity and persistence and just patience needed for the Inferno is actually a huge point of value for it?
I like both. I like both like designs. There needs to be some long form content. I think it's a different like skill, and it's like it can be interesting. It's the endurance of being able to do something for like a long period of time is like difficult and valuable, I think. A lot of in Inferno, the reason it's so fun is a lot of people say like the initial waves are boring, but the initial waves are, I would say the most boring wave is maybe the handful of waves after you get to first major, where I literally in a speedrun, I will be just sitting there praying mage and just shooting him. That's it. That's all I do, right?
Yeah.
But the waves before that, I'll be starting in the middle of the room. I'll be flicking the entire room. I'll be swapping to melee prey to run past a melee and like get him lined up so I could chin off a bloblet. Like I'm running around the room and I'm taking a bunch of damage to like do extra damage. Like the early waves are super, super fun in a speed run.
Yeah. The min-max portion of it is really cool.
Yeah, I would recommend if anyone is bored by those waves to give it a shot. It's pretty fun.
I think like the sad point of that, like because I agree with you, of course, the speed runs are crazy deep and just there's so much tech to it, and you can always be improving from based on each wave having its own unique spawns and reacting to all those and finding ways to manipulate it to complete them quickly. I think for like a first clear, it's so often disincentivized to engage in that because you're just hearing save your supplies, save your supplies, save your supplies. So you're playing every wave about as safely as you can possibly play it, which eventually just results in the first 50 waves being like very just like monotonous. And then I remember like, because I was so focused on saving supplies and so focused on making sure that I had enough coming into Zuck that like, man, I was watching videos on the other monitor at one point, but I fully recognize that if people want to take that extra leap to even just learn it right off the bat, like learn some of these strats off the bat, not only would your Inferno clear be faster, you'd probably have a lot more fun doing it, right?
Yeah, whenever I'm talking to people about Inferno, I'm always trying to be like, you do not need that much for Zuck. Like everybody, you feel like on your first runs, you're like, I need to save as much as possible for the highest chance of killing. You cannot drink through 4 brews at Zuck. Like you just can't.
Yeah.
Like you're just not even you're gonna end the Inferno with extra. I say if you have 2 brew, 2 restore, that's enough, right? So if you like end up getting to Zuck with like 5 brew, 5 restore, and then you die, you know, like, okay, I'm well ahead of what I need, and like I can keep sending. I feel like it's like a player psychology issue more than the content. I don't know how to like encourage players to like get outside of the like gotta save supplies and like just be comfy and just like click and just go. But
100%. For like the theoretical future 5 years down the line mage cape that they're definitely 100% going to add. What do you, how would you like to see them do it? Like if you had any, like, I don't know if you would have a lot of criticisms of Inferno, or I know you probably have some criticisms of the Coliseum. I sure as hell do, especially with the invocation system. I fucking hate the invocation system. How would you like to see this fictional mage cape be laid out? Like what are changes to make for this kind of content?
I have very minor complaints with Inferno. Like, I wish the bloblets, when they spawn off a blob, were off ticked so you could pray them all. I think it's really annoying that that's like force damage. That's all I can think of. Inferno's pretty watertight. I think it's very solid content. You could argue the tanking rangers off spawn in the 50s is annoying because it's random damage, but Coliseum. You can talk about the invos. The invos are, some are incredibly difficult to deal with, and some are like, they don't even do anything. Like, myopia in certain situations literally won't affect you whatsoever. But then getting something like Red Flag or, I don't know, Frailty 3, where you're at 60 health or something like that, like, those are really, really bad. So when you have invos like that can just, like, it feels like it never truly is impossible, but it feels like when you get offered a bad hand, it's just bricked, which does not feel fun. In such a high skill like thing, when you're like, yes, I got to wave 11. Okay, here's my chance to kill Soul, and then you get like Bees Totemic. It's like, okay.
Yeah,
well,
especially like frustrating for a new player, right? Where like you might be already relying on what is it, the triple south or double south, that the dreaded one, like. That's already breaking the 99.9% of new players that are just going for their first clear. So there's a layer of RNG for that spawn, and there's just a layer of RNG for all spawns, right? Because there are some really easy Coliseum spawns for like every wave, and there are some brutal ones, like way more brutal than I would say anything that I've personally experienced in the Inferno doing it. And like there's this like really big swing of like a 2 out of 10 difficulty wave deep in the Coliseum where you have to off tick once, like just from like a pillar, just not nothing
Yeah.
crazy. And then you have like a 9 out of 10 like triple, or what is it, double south, where you're like have to immediately off tick Manticore, Shockwave, and fucking like now and it's hitting you with range first, and like it goes so crazy that the swing is so wild that on top of that, having that, oh, well, now that run is bricked because of the, Bees Totemic and whatever Manticore one, if you have 2 more waves left. Like, feels so like it just punishing in a way that might even ruin a good run that you feel very confident in just because of that external tertiary
Yeah.
RNG.
I would say the waves in Coliseum are much simpler than Inferno. And I'm not saying easier, I'm saying simpler, because there's just like less mobs generally, which means there's like what you're saying, there's a huge swing in difficulty. Like sometimes everything will go behind pillar and you don't have to do anything. And what that means is that if you're going for quiver, you could just hope, everything goes behind pillar every single wave and you never really have to do anything. And then you can get your quiver that way. So you don't even like necessarily have to interact with the content. I think there's 2 reasons. I think one is the mobs don't have that many spawns, so there's like only a handful every single wave, where Inferno has like a bunch of spawns all around you, and there's a like large variety in that. And also the length of Inferno means that you can get a luckier run with Inferno, but you're always going to have a bad wave somewhere. Like that will happen. Where with Coliseum, like it's so short, like that might never happen. Like there's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like those are the harder waves. Like you could go 5 waves and have everything go behind pillar. That's not that crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And simultaneously to that too, like because it's so much shorter, you're not as worried about supplies. Soul is totally lossless. Like you're not gonna be getting hit off prayer by a ranger unless you're like off taking, I guess, the major ranger on Zuck, which I don't even know how to do, but I think people do that. So but for Soul, you can essentially do Soul with taking 0 damage, right? There's not even any chip damage. I would say the only risk of Soul damage is there was no chip damage, right? Because that's how Settled was trying to do it. So yeah, Soul is like lossless by comparison to most players doing Zuck, and simultaneously to that, it's 12 waves and shorter. So there is a strat of just bringing a Dins, having full Oath Plate. Like I did melee Coliseum as my first doing it. So I'm like, yeah, I have enough inventory. If something goes really bad, if there's a really nasty stack and I don't want to like learn how to do like a Z pillar solve or whatever, I can just run to the other pillar, shoulder half a brew or a whole brew even, and I'm still fine. Like I have 4 more waves left. Who cares? There's less of that supply management involved, right?
Yeah, and meanwhile, Inferno, like the pillar stacks are so straightforward every time. Like you never get anything nearly as nasty as Coliseum. Like it's just the swing in difficulties like all over the place in Colo for sure. I feel like if I was making a new piece of content, like learning from both, yeah, I would definitely more spawns than less, I think is more interesting, and then like lower damage on the mobs versus them just like deleting you outright like Coliseum does. Especially if you have like Manti Mayhem or something, you can get killed in 1 game tick, like just stacked out from 99. Inferno, that doesn't happen. I mean, it can happen, but like it's a lot rarer.
And there's also just like some invocations. I know they're made to some be harder than others, but like what is it, the 3rd tier of Manticore invocation? How do you do that? Like it just that feels like it throws off everything, right? Like it just feels like
or it just gives you a normal Manticore orbs and it does nothing, right? So again, exactly, like the giant swing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. Because I never took the 3rd one, so I didn't even know it could give you a normal one. But yeah, the fact that it can and can't just makes it feel even worse when it doesn't, right?
It just adds a 1 in 3 chance to make it horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, I feel like it's so. Frankly, my take is I've been always pretty I don't say critical of this type of content because like I'm critical of Nex. A lot of people know that I'm very critical of Nex as a piece of content, but it's hard for me to be super critical about like the Inferno and Coliseum, where like it's clear that this content has so much value to so many people, has so much meaning, and they love it so much, and it's obvious it has so much depth. Who am I to sit here and be like, well, I didn't like sitting for 50 waves on the Inferno on my first, like, like who am I to say that? Like, who cares? For me, it's like I don't like the swing in the Coliseum. I didn't like the length of the Inferno, but I also recognize the value, maybe arguably even in both. But at the end of the day, the biggest criticism I have the Colosseum is that Soul is like the coolest fight in the entire game, and the fact that it's behind 12 waves, so sad. I fucking love Soul so much. I think it's one of the most like novel encounters that had to be made so easy, or that's wrong. Had to be made more easy because it had to come after 12 waves, where I feel like there's so much potential there to make it like the coolest and hardest fight in the entire game with like crazy like Dark Souls tier like combo switch ups where he does like different attack patterns and like you can't just memorize the two that he has. Like I don't know. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
tangent, but yeah, I'm generally I love Soul. I don't. How do you feel about Soul as a fight in general? Like, what are your issues or
Yeah,
praises for that one?
Soul's in my top 5.
Okay, cool.
I would like if he did drain your supplies somewhat. I know he's going to on like your first quiver. Obviously,
Yeah,
like you're gonna make mistakes, and it definitely will drain your supplies. I would like if he had some, I don't know, some basic chip or something. I don't know. People are gonna be pissed about me saying that. when
No
you're
monkey
when you're
loves
really good
chip
at
damage.
Soul,
Yeah.
when you're really good at Soul, you don't need any brew. You can use all your brew before, and you can kill him like from full health, and nothing will happen. And it's really fun when you kill him. I don't know, maybe your first 20 times, right? Like you'll be learning all the mechanics and that kind of thing. And then after that, it's like, okay, he's like a real pushover. Wave of 10, 11 are like significantly harder than Soul.
Yeah, but I guess maybe that's a purposeful thing because I would say the same exact thing applies to Zuck. I feel like Zuck is definitely a lot easier than some of the waves in Colosseum. I'm forgetting which one, but there's like 2 or 3 waves in the Colosseum that are like the notoriously difficult ones, and then after them, you're just kind of like, oh, well, now it's going to be like 2 rangers and a major, 2 majors. Like you're like, okay, you're just AFKing these waves essentially, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Um, yeah, I don't know. I like the like that you can like completely master. It does feel like a Dark Souls boss. Like when you're a really good player at Dark Souls, like people do the damageless runs. Like
yeah,
it's definitely the same kind of vibe.
yeah. Sorry. I think you were going to say something else.
No, you're good. Go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay, cool. Yeah, so when it comes to Soul, I love the parry mechanic. I'm a big parry slop enjoyer. I love parrying in my video games, and I think old school RuneScape has had a couple bosses where you kind of do that in a roundabout sense. It's just everyone's gonna roll their eyes when I'm bringing this up because I've talked about it so much. But Sebe and I had like a back and forth in regard to potentially adding a system to old school RuneScape with that kind of incentivizes a level of like quote unquote good timing, perfect timing parrying, wherein whenever you would switch to a protection prayer at the exact tick where it was going to hit you, you kind of like deal a little bit extra damage. My initial idea was that your weapon attacks one tick faster, but that seems way overpowered. But like, you know what I mean? You get rewarded essentially for perfectly doing it. Obviously, there's going to be some issues with balancing because people can just flick through it or like one tick flick through it. But stuff like that to me would be cool, and all of that is just because how much I enjoyed that perfectly timing the melee hits on or melee prayers on the Zuck combo, or Zuck fuck Soul combo. Yeah,
Yeah, getting bonus damage for doing something perfectly is really fun. There's like a handful of bosses that do that. That is always fun. I don't know
uh,
about making a system that just like applies to the whole game because
that
a
can
lot of
offset
bosses aren't set
everything.
up for it and balancing.
I,
I would love to see that used as a mechanic way more though. Like that is definitely one of the best parts about Soul, that you can do bonus damage.
Yeah, I think like my take on that when like we're talking about a much more restricted version of that, because obviously for me it's like, oh well, yeah, just do it for the whole game, but like that would probably break half the game. But what like I'm just thinking of weapons that can like what's a good weapon that does like reposts and stuff. Oh, it's a rapier, and what's a rapier that no one fucking uses? Oh, the one from TOB, the Grazi rapier. So it's like it would be cool to maybe have the Grazi rapier be retuned around having a mechanic like that attached to it, where like it's a very like high skill ceiling weapon, but it can actually compete with some of the best if you utilize it really well. Maybe its strength bonus is lowered, but like if you perfectly like prayer flake or hit your protection prayer on a melee hit, it hits on 3 ticks instead of 4, but obviously with lowered, melee strength, stuff like that. I think I just want a lot of the TOB stuff to maybe like get a pass. I don't. How do you feel about that? I know like you're like the TOB guy. You love TOB, so it's like, how do you feel? Or maybe even Chambers of Zarek more. I don't know, but I know you like TOB a lot. That's all I meant. And
Yeah.
how do you feel about potentially like going back and maybe revisiting some of those items? I guess the same thing can be said about Chambers of Zarek, but
I saw a interesting Reddit thread where a guy retuned the rapier to be 3-tick and have much lower stats.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting in a calc because it like fits in the game pretty well.
Mm.
It instantly becomes Biss in Nyla Room, which makes sense, right? Like the
That would
drop
fit
from
perfectly.
Tob is Biss in Nyla Room. That makes sense. And then it's just a really solid stab weapon on anything that's like lower defense. So it's like it beats the Fang in a lot of places. It was a really interesting suggestion. It was also really good on any of the bosses in Tob that are neutral defense, which is I always forget which ones. Like there's a couple, I think like Sodetseg and stuff. Like any of them that they don't have lower slash defense, like you can use it as a weapon as well alongside like a whip. So you would bring both. That was an interesting suggestion. I think that has some potential. Retooling the items from Tob would be cool because, like you were saying, like they're just, for the most part, like in progression, just not useful anymore.
Yeah, like where are you using the Sang, like ever? Right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong? I feel like that's just items just dead. It's one max hit over the Trident, and now the Eye of Ayak exists, which is more obtainable than the Sang. Arguably more obtainable than the Trident for some Iron Men. Frankly, it's super easy to get the Eye of Ayak, unless obviously Doom is a big skill hurdle. Like it feels like so obtainable to me. So yeah, it's just really weird. It's a really bizarre
the
situation.
the eye feels like it should cost like 400 or 500 mil to me, and it's
Yeah.
like I don't know what it is, 80.
Because it's just it kind of deals. And to be clear, I think Doom is one of my favorite fights. I know some people really don't like it. Some people are very critical of it. It's one of my favorite fights. There are issues, but it's like I love a fight that's like a minute long. But during that minute, you are just like you're it's that sweating over the keyboard, like smashing it meme, right? Like you are so locked in for that minute. I think there are some issues with pacing it, like getting a double shield phase is really cringe. But like my God, there's some points in Doom that are just so on it. And obviously the gap between a Delve 7 and an 8 is such an enormous jump in difficulty. I would say Delve 8s and Deep Delves and stuff are some of the most challenging just outward skill mechanic or skill expressions just on like normal bosses. We're not talking like solo Tob stuff here. Like it's really challenging and it was a really fun thing to learn and react to. And I'm a big fan. But yeah, like it just feels so like the fact that some loot drops at like Delve 3 or 2 or whatever, right? The conflictions are at 2 or 3, right?
Mhm.
To me, it just feels kind of a bit of a missed opportunity, or maybe just like an oversight. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that's very goofy. Like dropping, it feels like the Toa issue where you can get stuff below 150 as well. It just feels like wrong. It feels goofy.
Mm-hmm.
GameCube, Jonah had a really good video on the drop rates in general where I think he was saying 1 through 7 grinding is only like 10% longer grind than doing 1 through 16. So you're getting like 10% more total loot for doing 15 times the effort or something like that. Like going, like you said, going from 7 to 8 is such a huge jump, and then doing that another 8 times, like that's so much hard. I do feel like the scaling on loot at Mocha's all over the place. Like you're heavily rewarded early, and it doesn't scale super hard, which just feels
I
weird to me.
My like first time, and I promise this is relevant to what you just said. One of my first times like really delving deeper into RS3 was in the recent leagues. I played a lot of the recent leagues, and I made a video about it. And like a big like not realization but point of comparison was how RS3 does its Enrage bosses, which obviously Doom was heavily inspired by and was originally seemingly supposed to be an Enrage boss like you would see in RS3, but at some point during development they either backpedaled, couldn't figure out a way to implement it properly. But it is like night and day the difference between the way the RS3 Enrage system works and what they implemented here with Doom. And for as much as I think the Delve system is interesting and cool, and I get why the RS3 system would have probably ravaged the economy in some ways. I can't help but feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity to have like such a, I don't want to say shallow, but like a very simple, translation between those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
It generally, yeah, from RuneScape 3 to old school is a totally different like balance philosophy. I like Talos in that game just keeps increasing his drop rate until you get to like 100 KC in a row or something.
200, I think.
Whereas with yeah, it
It's
caps
crazy.
at some point. I don't remember what KC, but yeah, you can store up to 200 kills.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's storing it. Yeah, you're right.
With generally when they add a hard variant of a piece of content as well, I remember this like hard mode Tob. I was all excited, like, oh, now I get to really show off with like a harder version of Tob, and I can make more, and like I can show off my skills more. I'm so excited. And then when it came out, it's like, okay, the purple chance is I don't know, 10% higher or something, and then there's a lower chance of a verdict, and then the raid takes 10% longer. So it's like, what am I doing this for? What? It's all only for kits. So generally with like old school, it's like they reward you with cosmetics and like more personal stuff to your like account, like Blorva, like that kind of thing, than like heavily rewarding you with GP. And in RS3, they're just like, yeah, just shower you with gold. If you are good enough to do it, like you get just ridiculous money.
Yeah,
Like
there was that.
both have downsides. Like it's less fun to not get showered with money, but getting showered with money is like caused them economic issues.
Yeah, it's very there's that meme picture of like someone has a 200 kill streak at the Arch Glacier fight, I think it is, and it's like 50,000 battle staffs are just like sitting there in like that
25,000 crystal keys.
Yeah,
like it's just absurd.
It's really funny, but I definitely don't believe that there should have been that level of like translation, because yeah, that would just completely destroy something in the game 100%. But
if I made Doom, I'd be like a happy middle ground, I think, where the drops start at like 5 or 6, and then like if you do 1 through 7, like yeah, you can eventually finish your grind that way, but it's gonna be slower. And then maybe make it scale all the way up to like 16, where it's not getting harder, but like you're still like getting rewarded for like going as deep as possible. And then maybe after 16, it's not scaling anymore, so you've got like a cap on it. That's probably what I would have done, where it's like you have to fully do the content, and you get like heavily rewarded if you're like capable of going like super far with it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. In fact, like my stance on it too is that like you can probably just remove the first 4 delves. Like for as much as I like the idea of starting really slow, like they start really slow in that they just have like 2 mechanics happening very slowly. And I feel like starting with delve 4, yes, it's going to be a bit more of like an increase, but like is car phase at delve 5? Is that the first delve with car phase?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think
So like it kind of makes sense that way. I think all the mechanics in delve 4 are super intuitive, super obvious, and like they are definitely not the easiest things in the world for immediately coming into it for the first time, but like they're not that much harder than like a Yama. The first 3 Doom floors are frankly like twin Royal Titans tier difficulty, which for a boss that's supposedly like a super end game encounter, I think supposed to be that. It feels a little bit like bizarre and maybe not super relevant, but I get why they did that scaling system. And I, just like you said, I would probably not drop loot until like 6 or 7, and then or multiplicatively increase the chances through 16. That feels way like it makes way more sense, and it would have retained a lot more value on the pieces that aren't just the Avernix, right?
I was really nervous when Mocha was coming out, because they were talking about adding skip tokens that the boss would drop, and it would skip you. I think they were saying to cave 4, and it was like immediately I'm like, well, are the first caves like super lame and we're gonna want to skip them? Like, and they got rid of those, but I think that's like I could see why they were thinking that. Like, yeah, they are. There's very little going on. Whereas we talk about with Inferno, like, oh, there's all this depth if you really look into it. Like, what is going on with Doom? Like, what can you really do on Cave 2 on your 400th time? Like,
but like 7 and 8, like Delve 7 and 8 to me are just so tight. Like they're just such a fun encounter. The double boulder into the like immunity Leviathan lure thing is like one of the hardest things I had to learn in the game. I think like figuring out how that works. I think my first ever Delve 8 was me just soaking the floor like rock that would fall on you, because I just couldn't focus on all those things happening at the same time. But it was just really fun. It was really fun to kind of like figure all that stuff out, and just seeing how deep people can push the encounter. So we're on the topic of like more bosses right now, and I just really quickly want to circle back to Perilous Moons, because I'm a big Perilous Moons defender and or enjoyer. I think it does so many things well. I think at its core, the idea that like you really benefit from tank gear from Barrows that leads into Perilous Moons, even if it's not perfect, is a very intelligent choice of like creating 2 synergetic pieces of content that mimic one another's like progression paths. And there's just small things, not to ramble too long about it. Like I love the fact that Perilous Moons, maybe even unintentionally, mimics like a CoX prep phase, where new players might get somewhat comfortable with like prepping for an encounter before the encounter during like the entire encounter, which is a very obviously a big thing in Chambers of Xeric, doesn't exist in any other piece of content. So it's small things like that that I really like. But of course, some of the bosses, specifically, I feel like they're just a bit too long. There's not enough like stuff you can do during some of the intermission phases, and they become
Yeah.
really dry. The best one by a country mile is the Eclipse Reflection phase. That phase is so fun. The other ones I feel
Yep.
really struggle. You know.
The clone phase is the only one where you are getting rewarded like for doing something versus
Yeah.
just like existing. I have a lot of issues with moons. I don't like the curse mechanic is never explained to you as a player at any point, and I constantly am like educating people on like, yeah, if Eclipse hits you, you stop hitting. They're like, wait, really? I thought that fight just sucked.
Yeah,
Like,
I when you said that, I did not know that existed, and I've done like 500 perilous moons clears. So
yeah.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it builds curse, and the more times you get hit, it has a chance to reduce your damage by 10, flat 10. So it adds an extra 10 flat armor, which is like insane. That's why that fight is so slow. And if you don't know that, you're not going to do anything to like counter it or anything like that. So they don't communicate a lot of the mechanics to you, and yeah, the lack of interactivity and punishment or reward on anything, they just feel like nothing mechanics. The one really bad one is the like when your weapons get frozen by blue moon
Exactly.
and you
Yeah.
go kick them out. If you ever just decide, you know what, I'm just not going to do this, you just sit there. Your punishment is she reappears, it hits you for 10, and then you can keep attacking her.
Yeah, no,
like
exactly. And the same applies,
nothing,
by the way,
absolutely nothing.
to the other intermission phase on Blue Moon, where you literally can just AFK it shields for 50. That's one hit.
Yeah.
That's against her, right? It's so silly. I completely, I feel like doing mechanics correctly should have objectively just damaged the boss. Like all the damage you're doing. Like to me, the Jaguar that's probably my second favorite because it's fun. Like it's a fun mechanic to learn. That's early, as you pointed out, early Tob prep, I guess, right? With stepping in and out, it's fun to master it, and I really like the way it's handled. But for the longest time, when I was a new player, I thought I was dealing damage to him or her, I don't know, while I was hitting the Jaguar. But no, the moon heals, and the damage you're dealing is just offsetting the heal that happened when the intermission started. So it's like,
yeah, so why don't they let you choose? Like, okay, well, it takes your health. You could hit the Jaguar to get health back and not do damage, or you could hit the boss and
yeah,
do damage.
true.
Like, wow. Like
Yeah,
any other boss would be designed, like if you get better and you can deal with the consequences, like then you get rewarded with killing the boss faster. Like that makes total sense.
Yeah, so that's always been my take with moons, where it's like the overarching philosophy of it and the loot especially, and just like the aesthetic is great. Like everything about it I love.
It is
I
pretty.
think the fights are just very like there's I think like you don't need to like rework any of them. Just like slightly tweak them a little bit, and just it solves for a lot of the min-max issues that occur with it. I think like the step under is probably the most min-maxy you can get with moons, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
And that's cool. I like that mechanic.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a cool one. I never knew about it when I was doing it. I watched one of your videos because I was trying to help on moons, because I was trying to help my friend who just got to it, and I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
you can step on it. What the fuck? Like I was totally blindsided by that. That's really cool. I think that the same. By the way, I have the exact same criticism about Huikodal as well. I think the fight is just a bit too nothing in its mechanics. Maybe it's because they're trying to make it really early game, but it's like, you got to teach people, and if you can just literally just AFK it at a certain point, like you're not really teaching people a lot, right?
Yeah, 100%. If I was making moons personally, it's people call moons like a mini raid, which it kind of is, where you like make your own supplies and then you're like
Yep.
fighting 3 bosses and then you get loot. It's like the idea is that it's like kind of teaching you the rounds for like raids. I don't know why they didn't like heavily lean into that. Like I would have made bosses have like exact transplanted mechanics from Tob. My idea was like make Blue Moon have a Sodet's Egg maze. So like instead of the tornadoes, it like puts you in a maze. And then there's no punishment for being slow or anything like that, but the faster you get through the maze, like the faster you can start hitting the boss again, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. So the interactivity is you end the mechanic faster and you can like get back to the boss faster, like that kind of thing. I would have made the Jaguars the exact same timing as like P2 Verzik, like that kind of thing. Like a bunch of stuff just to prep you for Tob. Because like I was saying, like a lot of people are not ready for Tob when they get there. This was like a free opportunity for them to like teach people, I feel like.
100, and I completely agree with you. I think that a fight that does, in my opinion, the opposite, in that it does it so incredibly well, is Scurious. I think like
Yeah.
Scurious is genuinely like one of the best updates in the like that I've seen from the game. Even obviously I don't do Scurious today, but that fight, like as a new player at the time, I came out like 2 weeks before I started playing or 3 weeks before I started playing. That was like my motivator to continue playing, to see that fight. And when I saw it, I'm like, this is really fun. It showcases all the most basic depth of the game, right? Like prayer switching,
Hmm.
moving out of stuff, swapping targets. It rewards you for doing it well by allowing you to do the tick perfect with the rat bone weapons. Like there's so much like awesome stuff in Scurious for like just a completely new 60 combat player. That like I think that's the gold standard for like a teaching, quote unquote teaching fight. The only thing that's missing, I think, is like a outside unique, right? Like something you can take with you after you leave. That'd be really cool. But beyond that, I'm a big Scurious enjoyer. Same applies, by the way, to the Royal Titans. How do you feel about those as a new player kind of a
Yeah,
game?
both Titans and Scurious are amazing content. I really like them. They teach you a lot. I mean, I've always been a very good player when they came out, so I'm not interacting with it hugely, but they're definitely really solid. They just give you like if you get to Zabak for the first time, you'll be like, oh, I've done Scurious. This is like very similar. I'm ready.
Good point, actually. Great point, actually. That's a super important. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, and with just a little bit more nuance to it. That's a great point. I think that what's cool is so we have upcoming, not leagues, but Rob. Actually, fuck. I do kind of want to quickly bring up leagues for just a moment for Echo fights. Something I brought up with Arcane when I spoke to him. I'm a big glazer of Echo fights. I think like apart from Soul, which I thought was just worse than regular Soul, I hated the way the totems worked. They were just really bizarre and janky. But like because the hitboxes were really weird. I don't know if you remember the original.
The
Echo
hitboxes
Soul.
are very bad. Yeah,
Really weird. I mean, obviously this would have taken way more time, but like I just wanted more combos. Like if he was just like combo switching on you, like in the middle of like a hit, he could like try grab one of your items and you have to click it quickly while moving. I feel like there could have been more cool stuff with Soul. But anyway, for the most part, the Echo fights, I can't think of a single Echo fight that's worse than the main game fight. And in some cases, I think a lot of them are just like way better, especially the KALPHITE Queen and the Gargoyles. Did you do those two in your original League's playthrough?
Yep, I did KALPHITE Queen, Gargoyles. I did both a melee and a ranged build last time. I can't remember all the ones I fought. There was a handful I didn't see.
How do you feel about those two? I'm because maybe it's a hot take for you to hear that.
You want my hot take?
Yeah, go.
I think KQ is a very fun boss.
What the wait? I thought you meant the Echo one.
That's my hot take.
The base one, the basic AQ.
The base one, yeah.
How?
It's insanely simple. It just hits you. Slight counterplay where if she decides to melee you, the damage rolls against your defense. So that is the one attack that you can block, but everything else just hits you. There is so much creative stuff that you can do at KQ to get in bonus damage. One of the things I've been telling people is like, when you have max gear, you bring Eye and Shadow, you do one Eye cast into one Shadow, and then you go back under. So it's one attack per 8 ticks that you take. So you take like no damage. So like, even though it's incredibly basic, it's incredibly straightforward and incredibly like, if you kill it a normal way, like it's like, this sucks complete balls. There's actually like a lot you can do to get around that, just from like the way RuneScape like does its mechanics. Like there's a lot of cool things you can do, like eating while stepping under and that kind of thing.
And to be clear, I agree with you on that. Where that's how I did it. I say recently, a month or two ago, I farmed out the head just for my elite diaries and all that because I'm prepping to max. And I don't have a shadow. In fact, I have 0 Masori pieces. I'm like 250 experts in, so very fun. But beyond that, I don't have a shadow, but I do have an eye, and I have like ancestral and all that stuff. So bringing a Slayer helm on task, bringing all that and doing that step under like two. What is that? A one? Is it technically a 1-2 or no 2-1? Because you're getting 2 hits for every 1 hit you're taking. Like you can do all kinds of like stuff there, which I actually thought was pretty satisfying. If the main thing I would change about the regular KALPHITE, outside of like maybe changing the fight, is I would just make the shortcut not accessible from hard diaries rather than elites. I think it's kind of insane to me that it unlocks for elites when you stop doing the boss.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's really bizarre. The run back is the worst part of the fight because when you get there, you get like 4 or 5 kills on a good trip. At least that's what I did, and like that it was fine. The commons are weirdly really good. The common table is really powerful. No really uniques, but solid common table, and so it was fine there. It was like fine, but
I'm
simultaneously,
I'm
yeah. I'm sorry,
thinking
go.
of grinding it on my hardcore with blowpipe and I just got a ballista, so I'm
Oh
thinking
my
like, okay,
god,
if I go there, I'll do a blowpipe shot into ballista. There's so much creativity you could do with like really
yeah.
weird weapons. I like that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I'd love to see that too. I didn't even think about that. I don't have a ballista, but I didn't think about that. And I've always been a proponent of finding use cases for really slow weapons. Maybe we can touch on that in a moment. But so in that case, I totally agree with you. I think my issue is that it's weird that like a what essentially shouldn't be an end game boss ends up kind of being an end game boss for like a head piece for
No,
an elite
totally.
diary.
Yeah.
Um, the Echo fight to me, I think like in some ways, and this is my like maybe copium defense of it, is in some ways it transposes the of what you're describing with the regular Kalphite Queen into the Echo fight. Like the step under mechanic in the regular Kalphite Queen was a clear inspiration to the step under mechanic of the AoE that the Echo one does. And I felt like that was such like a cute and like creative like call that keeps the soul of the fight in some ways while still giving it like more like proper mechanics or whatever. So I'm a really big fan of the Echo version, just a really, really big fan of it. Um, and I feel like the Echo version, frankly, could be like an awesome mid game boss. Like you could go there with a unique on the table and like farm it out as a mid game iron or whatever, and just have a great time with it. While like the base version, obviously, you're holding off until you're much deeper in your journey. How do you feel about like
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I could see that. I think yeah, I think it loses a lot, but it is a cool mechanic. I like the like waves. It's similar to the fight in what is it? That one Varlamore quest, the one that unlocks Doom. With
Yeah,
the
Dawn and Twilight's end of
Twilight's
Dawn.
Final Dawn.
Yeah. That fight was
The
sick.
like
By the
fire
way,
attack is really cool. That
that
you're
fight
like
is so
dodging like
good.
out of the patterns.
I
Yeah.
like that the whole teleport mechanic on that fight and like the fire, yeah, dodging out of the really fucking cool fight. Like they've been kind of cooking with some of the quest fights where I'm like, damn, mid game boss Jagex, like this is perfect. I'm always a big proponent of mid game bosses because it always incentivizes me to start a new account when I see a bunch of new mid game stuff being added. But I think that
Yeah.
but I agree with you completely. The gargoyles to me though, like no way you're gonna say you prefer the original gargoyles.
No, I don't. I'm trying to remember exactly how that fight went. I know there's like a bonus grotesque,
Yeah, those are the middle guy,
and
and
it
you
does
don't
like
have to
the
kill.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to
It does
kill
like
the
the
two
waves
side
of
ones.
lightning, kind of like
Yeah.
Leviathan with like the fires. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he chucks you against the bell, which I thought was fucking sick. And then he like locks you. Like, you have to like you have to avoid it so you don't get locked between like the fire or whatever. And I like the fact that like you can technically kill the two like ones throwing mechanics at you because they do like AoEs and stuff at you to make it a slower kill but safer. Or you can just focus on the main guy and get it done
Yeah.
much faster. I love that. Like that to me, that's the kind of design where I really like. Where like for newer players, it might be beneficial to focus to make it a bit smoother. But for players that are more confident, you can just go in and cook the main guy and get it in and out in like a minute. I thought stuff like that's great. And simultaneously, the current gargoyles are just fucking horrible in my opinion. So anything that would improve on that.
I like grotesque on paper. Like the mechanics are cool, and
Yeah.
there is some cool stuff you can do. Like you can push phases. You can get it to like right before you're gonna phase, like dusk, and then like do a Chally, and then Chally's got the huge variance in damage. But if it hits enough to send the next phase, like it's got that downtime, so you're just doing a ton of damage with it. There is some fun stuff. But yeah, the main issue with grotesque is just how much downtime it has. Like there's
So much downtime.
the cutscenes are just so long. Yeah.
And it's like unwarranted too. It's not like a Verzik P3 moment where you're like, oh my
Yeah.
god, you're like at the edge of your seat. You're like, you took no damn, like you did nothing, and you're already like flying in the air. I think that also I want to point out that I did these fights, like grinded them a little bit, not too much, but a bit of grinding on them just to get the combat achievements and stuff way before the Nox Alley came out. I feel like the Nox Alley trivializes so much content at this point. That is like originally kind of bad, right? Like the Grotesque Guardians is a great example of like you can just Halley it, doesn't matter. You do like
Yep.
3 or 4 times more damage. I'm not gonna say Zulrah is bad, but like it definitely makes Zulrah a lot easier for like people with the Nox Hallies. So yeah.
No, yeah, totally.
I think when it comes to just we kind of touched on a bunch of different bosses here. We kind of gave our thoughts on them, and I like hearing your input. And now this is the inevitable part of the conversation where I drift our gaze to my arch nemesis, a boss that I've been so critical of for the longest time. A boss specifically that some people have become very upset about me being critical of, but Nex. I hate Nex. I have such a small like I the only bright side to Nex to me is like some of the most top end like elements you can do with it with like you're manipulating the range and stuff. But like the entire fight just feels like it's out of like 2011 in like the worst way. To the point where I'm surprised where I originally played the game and I was like looking at fights and stuff. I'm like this fight's 2023, so I'm like pretty excited for it. Seems like a really new awesome fight. At that point, I loved TOA because I was doing like 150s to 300s back, when TOA is really fun. So like I was like, yeah, more new modern content to do. I'm so happy about that. Finally getting to it, it's like I just well, how do you feel? What do you feel? How do you feel about Nex? Is my question.
Okay, it's complicated.
Yeah.
I have the I run the Nex Finder tool in our Discord for like team finding for Nex. I really like Nex.
Oh, okay.
Or liked Nex.
Okay.
There is a lot of stuff like you said, it's kind of got the same vibe as KQ, where it's like it's old and at a face value, it's like it just destroys you. But there is a lot of cool stuff you can do to mitigate that in the same way, which is something I always really like. Good example is so like emergent tech is like melee P2 is really cool. Like you're running in, you're tanking a bunch of damage and you're doing fang hits, and then you get out like after you take too much damage and you heal it all back up. That's really fun. You can mitigate damage by, how do I explain? When you're doing the mages, you can, with your teammate, constantly be swapping between dragging Nex, so she stops attacking you while she runs up towards you, and then shooting at the mage while being under Nex. So you're like maximizing the time that she's off you, which makes you take like half the damage, something like that. It's like a big deal. So a big benefit of T-Bow versus just the damage it gives you is the utility of being able to like go anywhere and still be like shooting the minions, which is fun. The changes I hate.
Oh, really? You like
I hate the
healing
QOL changes. I think they're really bad.
How come?
So some of them are really cool. I like the healing off the blood velds. It just gives you a ton of healing and it feels really satisfying.
Yeah.
Like that's really cool. It works in an awkward way because you want to hit the altar during that phase. So you're always like, oh, do I heal up off the minion or get spec energy back for this phase? That's always a little bit awkward. I do like that though. I love the like huge like health pack healing off of them. That's fun. My issue is the way they implemented the 3 melee attack thing, where it's like she's forced to do 3 melees before she mages, because it's insanely confusing in a really dumb way. So, okay. When Nex melees you, she is forced to do 2 more melees. So, and you're like, okay, that's straightforward. That's easy. I'll just pray melee for 2 more attacks and we'll be good. That breaks down if she swaps to your teammate and they are not next to the boss. Because if they are not next to her, she does not need to melee. She can mage. So, okay, let's say she hits you 2 times and then she swaps to your teammate who's off in Timbuktu. They're hitting the altar to get spec. Okay, so she'll mage them, which is really confusing. You're like, okay, she just maged. Okay, I thought she was going to melee one more time. So then you're like, okay, well now what is she going to do? Like, she probably just reset her attacks, and now she's going to, like, the next time she melee, she'll do 3. So she'll run up to your teammate, and she'll melee them. And then they're like, okay, I'll keep melee on for 2 more attacks. No, because she remembers that she did 2 melees, and then she was ineligible to do a melee. So she remembers until she does the next melee that that she is still in that cycle. So basically what it ends up doing is it's completely impossible to keep track of that, and it turns it into just can't melee a lot. Like, she melees a lot more than she used to, and you can't really keep track of it. There's another thing where if you count 3 melees and you step under her 1 extra game tick, so instead of your typical 5 tick, you do 6 ticks before you attack. So you waste 2 extra ticks. She has like a 95% chance to do another set of 3 melees. So you can avoid a bunch of damage by keeping track of the mechanic that's almost impossible to keep track of. It's really frustrating in practice. As a player that's like looking for ways to like optimize bosses and do them at like the best of my ability, that never feels good. I feel like I'm counting at Hydra. And Like I'm not. It feels like impossible to deal with, and it's not fun for me at least.
Yeah, that's a great explanation to that, because obviously I've never done next prior to the QOL changes, and I feel like, frankly, I mean that what you just described does sound really terrible, and it does explain some of my experiences as well. I don't know why it wouldn't just why can't she even swap to different targets when she's in the melee cycle? To me, feels kind of strange, but maybe there's some issues with pathing that you can manipulate if that wasn't the
It
case.
feels random if you don't know what's going on, which is
Yeah.
really annoying. Like that doesn't feel
definitely.
good.
What it feels like to me is it feels like I'm back in Chambers of Zarek, in that like I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like it's really like obtuse. But Chambers of Zarek has its rigid set of mechanics that all generally have like a solve to them that feels like you can just kind of figure it out. Like, yeah, the attacks for Ohm are random for the most part, but the specials follow a cycle. The mage skip is really confusing as a new player. 100%, it just doesn't make much sense at first. But all the other mechanics, the original mechanics of the fight, do make sense. The lightnings, you obviously don't stand in them. You can tile skip them, or you can just find the gap. The poison, you obviously just run around, right? Or walk it to be safe. Of course, you can do the poison run too. So it's like every mechanic has its like 1-to-1 solve that you can min-max from that. My issue, one of my many issues with Nex is we haven't even touched on the biggest problems, but for me, but the one of my biggest problems with Nex is that it feels like it doesn't have that. Like the only mechanic to me in Nex that has any level of like intuitive design to it is like the shadow puddles on the ground during was it P2, right? Like, I don't know if we count the first phase. Yeah, P2. Like the shadow puddles on the ground. Okay, you don't stand in the shadow puddles, obviously. But like, it feels like every other mechanic in Nex, other than just swapping to the mage when she becomes immune. But even then, that feels like it has a really weird tell that could be improved on. But like, it just feels like there's none of that like architecture that like Olm has that you can always fall back to when you get lost in like a, especially when you're doing solo, right? Like, how do you get back into cycle in solo Olm? By paying attention to his next hit, right? Obviously there's probably more complex ways, but that's how I do it. And so like with Nex, it feels so much more obtuse than that, so much less like you can fall back to an expected pattern to just kind of get yourself back in the game. And then on top of that, she just does way more chip damage. She just hits off prayer seemingly in a more brutal fashion. She drains your prayer. She drains your stats. She drains your armor's durability twice as fast for no reason. Like my Carol's.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I looked at my Carol's. I started at 75. I ended the session with like 25. It was about to break. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So it's like all of that. And then on top of like that, which alone, it's like, okay, sure, you can like some fights, you don't have to like other fights. Like, you don't love Arax for that much. I love Arax. So like, yeah, fine. It is what it is. But then on top of all of that, you have the KC requirements on Nex. You have like this really obtuse system where new players are punished for trying to learn, because if you're trying to learn and trying to do the more like advanced tech and you die, you lose all of your stacked KC, and KC itself is already annoying. And then everyone 100%. Else that knows the fight is forced to wait for you to come back, re-gear, which is already annoying, and get your KC up again as like a new player that's already like, group and content already has its, hurdle, and we can touch on that, of like just finding players, because most of the game isn't done group. So it's a bit more complicated to, get used to that kind of system. And now you're like actively punishing people for teaching new players. That to me is like, bro, like how many layers deep into like the ball busting are we at this point? Like, it's not even a kink anymore.
100%. There's a lot to Nex that is like rough around the edges and not good, like objectively. I like Nex that it's one of the, everybody calls it a bruise simulator, which it requires you be good with using bruise, which is a thing that most other content doesn't really do that much.
True.
I really like that. That's like the biggest thing I see people struggle with when they're new to Nex, is like not knowing how to effectively heal back up and then get back on your feet with like combat pot. The brew, restore combat pot as quickly as possible is a thing that people like really struggle with early on. And it's a really useful skill to know for other content, which I always really like as well. There's like a lot of little stuff that Nex does teach you that you maybe don't notice at first on a surface level, but it does have some cool stuff going on. But yeah, no, what you're saying is totally, there's a reason nobody like likes it. It's because there is a lot of like rough edges.
That's the only reason that I very like vocal about wanting a rework on Nex. Is just because like I feel like I've never met some except one person who's now hate commenting on all of my tweets and also all of my videos. Beyond that one guy, who his name is like Next Lever 22. Not even joking. Like I'm not even joking
I know
right
who
now.
that is.
Yeah, like he like really likes Next, and he really hates my opinion on it. And he's like, "You talk to J mods, and you're trying to influence them." I'm like, bro, I'm just giving my opinion. But the point is that the only reason I really advocate for that, right? Like I might not like a fight. I feel uncomfortable saying it should be reworked unless like I've like it's hard to meet people that ever have like truly loved Nex, right? Like people love Inferno to such an extreme that even if I hated it, I would feel so uncomfortable advocating for like sweeping changes. With Nex, it feels like much easier in that way. But like honestly, like imagine like just elite, you get your elites done, your elite combats done, and like you just don't have a KC requirement anymore in Nex even, but you could probably put that to all the God Wars bosses. Like even that alone would just have so much of like a like do you feel like maybe that would ruin a part of the fight, or do you feel like it's fine to maybe do away with that system at a certain point, the KC system?
What it was in RS3 is just the minions had a chance to drop the ancient ceremonial robes that you get off the minions.
Yeah.
And that full set would just let you walk in the door. So
Yeah.
it was just like you brought it and then you walk in. And I think they wanted an in between where it's like you get a good chunk of KC like quickly, like the mages give you 4 KC, but you still have to do it. Yeah, the KC system does just feel bad for a boss that's like this hard. It really discourages learning. It's the same thing with the other God Wars bosses too. Like when you die, it feels really bad. Like when you're trying to do 6-0 bandos the first time, and you're just like 40 KC gone, I died instantly. Okay, try again. That does not feel good. It is definitely like an older system.
Yeah, learning Door Altar was like brutal, just because like obviously you die so quickly, and it's like you have to run back to get your shit too, because like the death costs at that point are really expensive from death. It's like 2.5-3 million, and Iron Man is painful. So it's like you have to run all the way back, go back, re-gear, come back, get your KC, get into, and then try it again. It's like that stuff to me it would feel bad. I genuinely feel like the KC system at a certain point just doesn't add much to the game, especially for content that people want to do and farm, and for content that you need other people to want to do and farm, right? Like Next is a group fight, so you need people to get there as quickly as possible and do stuff with you. It feels like so unnecessarily brutal to those people that want to learn it, right? Like losing all the, like even if it was just something stupid like or simple, like if you die, you just don't lose your KC. Like what if it just you kept it, right? Like what if you could just stack up 300 KC if you want, and you could just keep it, right? Like when you leave, like who cares?
Yeah.
Like, what does that ruin? So this is a great segue though, because I would love to hear your thoughts on just group fights in general. I know you're pro group fights, as am I, but I know it's a kind of a contentious topic in the community. Like, how do you acknowledge that, or like, yeah, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I get called a hypocrite too because I mostly do solo content. I do solo chambers all the time. Like I'm very rarely doing group content. I've done a lot of duo Nex, so and then like a good chunk of Tob, but it's not my like most done raid. So I don't interact with group content as much as solo content. I think my most completed raid is probably Toa.
I'm sorry.
But that's my most completed raid is Toa.
Sorry
I've done a lot of Toa.
I'm sorry to hear that, yeah.
I think it has a place in the game. There has to be group content and there has to be solo content. Like it's fine to have both. A lot of people just want RuneScape to be like a single player adventure and like that's it, and you never have to interact with anybody else. And like it's an MMO. Like you need a mix of both. You need to be encouraged. Team fights in this game are not the same mechanically as solo fights. They're completely different. And you could see it with like stuff like Solo Tob, where like the way you approach it is completely, utterly different. Or Solo Chambers, where like you cannot do the same things and you have to do something different. That's harder to like complete the content. Where if you have teammates to help you and you're communicating, like you can make the boss fights a lot more manageable and a lot easier. Like that has value. The communication is a skill. Like that is not, it's a skill you develop the same way as like movement or prayer switching. Like communicating, hey, The maze is on the left side. Like that kind of thing is like it is a skill. It's a thing that you develop over time, and a lot of people are weak in that
Yeah.
department, and it doesn't feel good to them to have to flex that muscle that they don't have. But
No, I generally agree with you. I'm just totally off topic here, but the last thing I want to mention about Chambers is Eric. I'm sure we'll talk about it again though. Is I wish that like there's threes and more, and there's solos. I wish duos had an route to do something cool with Chambers. It feels like duos are so like not done, just because it's just you can't do either of the fun things. Like you can't do a solo a run as a duo, and you can't do a trio as a duo. Like the strategies, right? So if maybe you're aware of something I'm not, but I feel like duos are just kind of fucked with Chambers as Eric. And I'm biased because I'm a duo group Iron Man. So
I do know something.
oh, really?
Even scales are fucked. So
Oh,
solos, trios, and 5-man. That's what you hear people running a lot.
yeah.
You hear like 5-man CM all the time.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
reason for that is the raid scales up to odd numbers. So solo is a solo scale. A duo is a trio scale. A trio is a trio scale. A 4-man is a 5-man scale. Like that's how it scales. Olm scales properly. He scales per person you add. So he'll do duo scale at duo. But the rest of the raid scales up. So they feel really bad. When you get to bosses like Monodial that just like them being scaled up super hard, like hit you ridiculously hard, it doesn't feel good.
I see. I had no idea it worked. I thought the way that CoX scaled was it scaled in odd numbers, wherein the even numbers scaled the minions and the odd numbers scaled the bosses, or I should say just Olm. The odds scaled Olm, and the every even number scaled like Mutadial, Tecton, and the minions and stuff.
Yeah, that's roughly right. But yeah,
Okay,
it's just every person you add scales Olm normally, but it does odd number scaling for the entire raid besides Olm.
The part that like frustrates me about duos is that like you can do a mage skip with duo if both of you are generally attacking the mage hand and then you swap to melee, because what I've noticed is that even thralls, it's so inconsistent and he just swaps randomly and gets offset. And then when you swap to melee, it just feels like you're just kind of whacking him and taking damage, and it just doesn't feel like it feels like there's less tech in duos than there are in trios and in solos. Is that true, or am I just missing something? Is there something you can do with melee phase that's crazy with duos?
I haven't done a ton of duos, but I've had a lot of fun doing it with my wife, where like we'll do like solo strats on top of each other, and it's really really fun when like I was doing it on my hardcore and she was on her main, and then she was like using a scythe and I'm using a lance, and trying to figure out how to like line those up in the same cycle, like that kind of thing. While we both basically do solo melee, but doing different methods. It looks really cool and it's really fun. I've had a lot of fun doing that kind of thing.
That does sound really. And I had that idea. I'm like, what if we just both do the solo route, like run, like the 1-0, right? No, that's not it's 4-1, 4-1.
4-1,
yeah, melee. But the issue is that maybe I'm totally misremembering. It's been a minute. I have like 350 CoX, but I have not done it in a minute. That one that you're taking from Olm has a chance of just being like a wall, right? So aren't you doubling that chance by doing a duo?
No, it doesn't increase the chance with players, I don't think. It's still the same odds. But also there is ways to set up that doesn't flame wall you. So you have to like, if you're gonna do that kind of thing, you need to both be really, really good at 4-1 to like understand how to like avoid that kind of thing.
Well, I want to clarify that I agree, and you're totally right. But like you can avoid the flame wall, but it would hit you off cycle though, right? Because the flame wall still exists after. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can avoid it in that like it like doesn't hit you, like it's just you miss it, right? You do a skip on it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like when you go back to resetting the head there and you move forward, it would still exist. So it would like fuck the cycle up. Like you won't be able to.
It blocks you. Yeah, there is ways to null it when you set
okay.
up, so it doesn't even appear. Basically, if you turn the head right and you're flinching from the middle, if he tries to put a flame wall in the middle, it just doesn't.
Yeah, nulls it. Yeah, like you're doing mage skip. Yeah.
So there's like ways of doing that as well. Like there is like intelligent counterplay. It's really complicated and hard though.
I know my duo partner's listening right now, so like.
we
gotta hit it up. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's a bit of a sidetrack. I think we were talking about like next KC changes. I might have totally missed what I was trying to say about bosses, but group content. We were actually talking about group content. Okay, perfect. So, and I generally agree with everything you said about group content. I like it. I come from the WoW scene, so obviously I like it. I like that
Yeah.
some stuff you can do it in OSRS solo. I like that there's group content you can solo if you're really good at the game. All that stuff is great, but group content's awesome. There are issues with everything surrounding group content, both from like player outlook and just accessibility to that content. And my take on that, and maybe you disagree, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this if you do, but my take on it is that group content inherently is just has more friction than solo content. Not because it's harder, but because it's inherently has more pressure associated with it because you have people relying on you. There are people setting aside time to do something with you, so you don't want to fuck up. So new players might feel a little bit more pressure in that regard. And then on top of all that, you just have the boss, right? Like the mechanics, all that kind of stuff, doing that well, communicating well. All that stuff is great. That kind of pressure is healthy and good for an MMO. But there's also that like tertiary external friction of just needing to get a group together in a game that's never taught you how to do that. And also, for whatever reason, every grouping system in OSRS is entirely different. Like the way the CoX board works compared to TOB, compared to TOA is just different. Like there's interface, you have to join a friends group or a friends chat in the fucking CoX one. You don't have to do that in TOB. And then on top of all of that, there's just bosses that don't have those kind of systems like Nex and Yama and Titans you have to join in CC, right? So it's like all of these external, or Discord, we do Rage, shout out to them. Like that's how I learned Chambers as Eric. All that stuff to me is both kind of unnecessary and just is so overwhelming for a new player. I cannot tell you how frustrating it was to want to learn Chambers as Eric or even most recently TOB and then trying to like you're just spending, I feel like you're spending most of your time just like browsing the We Do raids just over and over and over and over again and trying to just find people to teach you because you can't even post to do learners yet. Thank God that I have my clan, that I just ended up learning with them. But like that for someone who doesn't have access to that stuff feels so just obnoxious. And this is before you even step foot in the raid, which is actually really fun, right? So it's like all this is to say that a grouping system. I would love if old school RuneScape had a grouping system, not a random one, more so like the one that exists as the group finder in World of Warcraft, where you can like list your groups and then also like you get applicants to those groups and you could talk to them and invite them to your group and then like do a piece of content with them, like stuff like that to me. And I wish it was accessible from like essentially anywhere in the game. So you could like sign up to a TOB when you're fishing Karambwans, get over there, perfect. We have a 3-man, whatever, 5-man, whatever we want to do, and then we're going in. Like something like that to me, where it's so simple and easy to use, and it's also like homogenous to every piece of content. So it's the same. You'd use the same one for TOB, Chambers as Eric, TOA, and Nex, everything. I know that's a huge change. I know even the J mods are like, let's take it one step at a time. Let's make the clans better first. But like, that's my take on it. How would you feel about that? Or just like, do you have an opinion on just the grouping process in general?
That'd be pretty cool. It'd be neat if you could put up like an invite in the chat in like your clan and then have like the board interface pop up, that kind of thing. That would be really neat. I would love to see them integrate the party plugin into the game itself, because whenever if I'm ever taking someone newer to TOB, there's always the awkward like, okay, hey, can you get the party plugin? Also this other plugin that tracks specs, and also can you join my party? It has this password. The parties are so important for team content. It lets me see what defense you drain. It lets me see what your stats and your health are, what your inventory is for your setup. Yeah. It lets me ping tiles to be like, hey, stand here. Like that kind of thing would be so cool actually being in the game and just remove a lot of that friction, I feel like, because what ends up happening is I take someone newer and I'm like, is it even worth explaining to them how to get these 3 plugins that I don't know, man.
No, exactly. And I made a video just entirely talking about a potential future for a grouping system in the game. And I literally said something very similar to this, where I'm like, not only do you need a way to get a group together for a piece of content, you need a rework of just the party interface in general. Every MMO that has a lot of group content has this. I understand that old school RuneScape is a quote unquote a bit late to the game with standardized group content. Like you could argue back in the day, God Wars Dungeon was group content, but it was very like fluid back then, right? Like it was like very pickup oriented, very like, yeah, we'll go to bandos with 25 people. Why not? Like nowadays it's much more rigid. It's much more traditional. It's closer to the way WoW works with its grouping than it is to the way it worked in 2007, right? So yeah, with that in mind, I feel like a standardized, just simple approachable grouping system with a grouping interface like you would see in WoW, where like you see the heads up display with the name of, your party members. You can see, maybe you can click on them and see what their inventory setup is. You can see out what their spec bar is at. Like you can just see this information without needing a plugin that does it for you. That way, as you pointed out, people can get accustomed to using this all the way back in Twins or Royal Titans, whatever they're called, right? Like people
Yeah.
can already kind of wrangle around that. But I also understand how difficult it is to implement new UI features in OSRS when the UI is already getting really cluttered, in my opinion. And frankly, I think I said this in like my third ever video about the game, but one of the biggest reasons I know they paused it, I was so excited for like the full integration of plugins into a standard client is that they could use the plugin side, like widget side menu now to just do whatever they want with. It becomes a whole new space for UI management for Jagex to orient themselves around, where like instead of popping up in the game itself, it could pop up on the side, like like a plugin menu would be. And that just gives them so much more opportunity to add really useful features like this without clogging up the already kind of tight screen space that exists in old school. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think if I was gonna add like the party plugin to the main game, it'd be way more simple and
Yeah.
like it would just show like the defense of the boss, that kind of thing. And then, but what that would do is let like the plugins tie into it. So instead of needing 3 different plugins, I would be like, get this one plugin that makes it so I can with a side button see your inventory, like that kind
Right.
of thing.
True.
So then like it would just be simpler like to tie in with plugins as well. I think would go a really long way to getting people like grouping up together, just removing some of the friction and like the plugins being awkward and annoying to use.
100%. Another idea I had is a right-click invite as well, because you pointed out like an invite like link you could send in your clan chat. I would love if like you could right-click someone and there was just an invite option.
Oh,
and you could
perfect.
just invite.
I love that.
Yeah, that would be super super cool. I think that's just so convenient. I would love that. I would really really love that. And I think that like for content like TOB, that is so, because yeah, you could just always say, oh, just solo TOA, just solo Chambers of Zarek. First of all, learning Chambers of Zarek first as a solo, especially if you're a new player who's very used to the modern style of content, like or bossing, where it's like very like intuitive. Bro, I cannot imagine how a new player could just hop in to this piece of content, having done like TOA and Yama and all this kind of stuff, and like wrap his brain around how frankly punishing and unintuitive Chambers of Zarek can be on just off rip in solos, especially. Like I had such a hard time understanding how to set him in the melee. Like the mage phase is very simple, but the 1-0, right? But the melee phase,
Yeah.
like learning that 4-1, like straight up, your YouTube short where you're describing like the attack pattern on Ulm, that 30-second one, is like the best guide for it, because I watched like 5 YouTube guides about it, and each one of them is like 4.5 hours long for some reason. They're like, "Welcome to my Chambers of Zarek guide," and I just, bro, I like, it was crazy. So, I would love if grouping just became more standardized in old school, and that would also give them the opportunity to add more group content without also having it to be solo content, which creates awkward situations where now you can't make cool group activity or mechanics, right?
Yeah, I think it's just the reason people don't like group content is what you're saying, just the friction. And like even just getting rid of some of that, like just adding simple little systems that make it easier to group up would be great for sure.
I wanna ask you about some future content coming up. I know we have
Yeah.
raids, but we'll pause on that for a moment. I want to hear your thoughts on. I know you made a lot of videos talking about the rewards proposals, which is everybody loves those, opinion given kind of type videos. But but the upcoming Blood Moon Rise, I'm very excited. I'm a big quest enjoyer. I think their new quests, the Master's Quest, especially DT2, all that stuff is incredible. I'm a big fan of DT2 bosses as well, for the most part. And I'm very excited for Blood Moon Rises. And I'm especially excited for this new, from what they said, a Fasani tier boss. Just immediately, what are some, before we even talk about rewards, what are some of your thoughts going into this? What are you expecting from a difficulty perspective? And maybe this is a good opportunity for you to also like bring up Fasanis, which is another very contentious encounter akin to Nex.
Yeah, I don't like Fasani that much. It's okay. I would say Fasani is in that camp of handing out huge amounts of damage with no chip normally, where it's just like you don't really need resource management. If you do it perfectly, you take no damage, but it feels bad when you mess up, like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That's generally what I don't like about it. Some of the mechanics are really cool though. There's a lot of like cool stuff you can do with like
Yeah.
timing with the like you can melee overkill the pillars for like faster speed, and like catching the sleepwalkers is cool. There's cool stuff.
I agreed.
Um
I,
yeah.
the loot on Fasanis is a whole separate topic, but
Yes.
I think that the mechanically it's pretty interesting, and also like the the coolest mechanic on Fasani, I think it's visually cool, but one of the coolest mechanics, maybe this is a hot take, and I didn't hated it at first, is the prayer swap mechanic. That to me is like a level of psychological like messing with your most like I guess what's the word like the thing you're most used to doing in such a powerful way that I feel like the most that's the mechanic that kills people the most. I feel when they're learning Fasanis. Obviously, when you get it, you get it. But like that prayer switch mechanic opens up the opportunity for future mechanics that really kind of fuck with your character in more unique ways than just dodge something, pray against something. You know?
It is. Yeah, I didn't think about it killing new players. Like that's such a nothing mechanic once you have it all memorized.
Yeah,
But totally,
yeah.
that would be a thing that kills you a lot. Yeah.
Because you're so used to that, right? Like, but I guess maybe just for a quick, we have to, right? Touch on the rewards. Fasani's rewards, how do you feel about them? Like, how do we salvage this if we do? Like, what are your general thoughts on the Fasani's reward current situation?
Yeah, they were all added at a time when they were really trying to add incremental upgrades and nothing too crazy. And at the time, Harmstaff was Bis Mage, so that helped a lot. Harmstaff when it came out was like max cash, so it was a very different time. But they're definitely not max cash anymore. I think the way it drops common loot as well is just super unfun. The way it drops you bass and stuff, and just like you get nothing until you get a drop, never feels good. And I don't think they've really done that much anymore. It's pretty rare they do that kind of drop table. But yeah, that's a big part of why it feels so bad to like go dry for drops, that you just get nothing out of it like long term.
Yeah, it's very hyper rare uniques with really bad commons is just a really
Yeah.
nasty way to do it. And I've always had the opinion that if the commons or sorry the uniques were about as good or about as common as some of the modern fights, they would be worth fucking nothing. Like the fact that the staff is or not the staff, the orbs are 1 in 1,600 to get one is absurd for one of the longest fights in the game. Like as much as I love I love the fact that the way they like quote unquote buff the rates is by shortening the fight. I think it being like a 7.5, 8 minute fight, it was kind of ridiculous. But now it being like a 5.5 minute fight is actually a pretty decent. It is still pretty rare uniques, but it's decent. I would love to hear your thoughts on like I had this idea where you could just combine all the orbs and then just choose the one you get. It does fuck up the prices a little bit for sure, and just take the staff off the drop table period and put it on a vendor with no stats, and then the staff just gets the stats when you put the orb in it. Because right now the boss has more uniques than TOA does, which is insane to say, or I think the same amount of uniques as TOA does, which is insane to say. So I feel like finding a way to just offset that by combining them into like a dormant orb, which Telos inspiration, I guess, and then just being able to pick which one, which homogenizes the costs, but it solves so many problems that would like the orbs would already become cheaper if the fight was fixed. So like we're just kind of working in the future right now with that idea. But how do you feel about that? I'm curious if you see any issues with it.
Is it an orb you would be able to change like on the fly? Like
No, you just pick
like right click swap it?
No, you just pick which one, and it's permanently that
You just
one.
pick.
Yeah.
That causes the issue you see with like Saildor, where it's like
No one's ever gonna pick the cheap one.
both is expensive, and Saildor, if it was its own item, would be worth like nothing. But
Mhm.
you're encouraged to like never get a Saildor because it's so expensive, like because it's tied to the Bofa. So I don't know.
I agree
If
with
you were
you.
like a PKer and you wanted to get a volley, but it's the same price as Eldritch, I'd be like, I don't really even want to do that build that uses a volley. I feel like.
Well, I guess I wonder like how much the prices would drop if they're all homogenized that way. I don't think it would change the GP per hour just because they'd be more common, but like the prices would all kind of like I feel like the prices would become like maybe the volley would go up, but not to like the 400 mil or 300 whatever the amount the harm is
Yeah,
right now. Yeah.
it would equal out a little bit, but I don't think it would be like half of what it is. I think it would be like, I don't know, 20. I'm guessing. But I would assume Eldritch would go down like 20 to 25%, and then like everything else would go up to meet that. Because Eldritch is really useful for Inferno because it gives
Yeah.
you so much prayer. There's a lot of use in that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point, and I feel like it's hard to obviously predict it too. Like, how does removing the staff and then because you're essentially taking 4 items from the drop table or 3 items from the drop table, so now you're just seeing them more often as well. So it's like how much of that will be
yeah,
offset by the fact. So that's really hard. That was just like a random flyer I had, just because like whenever someone says like fix the drop table, what they generally mean for a fight like Fasani's is just moving them to a different boss. And I think every single developer I've ever spoken to about this has told me time and time again that it's really hard to create a new boss and then sell that new boss as something cool when it has the exact same loot that another boss already had. So like that's like a really challenging prospect from like a marketing
true.
development perspective.
It doesn't have that allure.
Yeah,
You're like, oh, it
exactly.
drops a harm staff, cool.
Exactly. So like it sucks that like all of these, and what you're saying is super valid, but like it sucks that all of these like external factors end up being a reason for a fight to remain in like these like the doldrums of fucking irrelevancy, considering how
This
little
is
endgame content there
this is
is.
why I like when they make content, I want them to take their time with it and really carefully refine stuff, because once stuff is out, it's tied to the economy and it's so hard to fix this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Yeah,
The
I
one
completely
thing
agree
they
with that.
changed is like adding Bofa, because originally it was just the sail door, and then when they nerfed blowpipe, they're like, well, that's a huge power problem, so now we need something that's in between blowpipe and T-bow, so they added Bofa. And I would say even that has like some issues. Like, well, I mean, CG has a ton of issues, but like that brought problems. Like trying to fix things after they're already tied to the economy definitely makes it like more difficult.
That's why Cox hasn't been rebalanced with its table either, huh?
Yeah,
I feel like
I
the
mean
chambers.
they've moved a
Yeah,
ton of stuff off
they
Cox.
have.
It used
Yeah.
to have the dragon harpoon and the thrown knives and the thrown axe and
Oh my
like
god.
the dragon sword. It had so many useless items.
Do you still think that Cox should have some of their uniques moved to somewhere else?
um, Cox does have a lot of rares. I think
Yeah.
they totally could. I was saying before TDs came out that they should just move regular claws there, because that's what dropped it before in
Yeah.
RS3, that kind of thing. I mean, if there's a time when it makes sense to move it, I'd be down for them to do that. But
Maybe it's crazy for me to say, but I would want them. I think the main thing Cox would benefit from is just shortening the mega rare table. I think it's the only raid with quote unquote 3 mega rares that have all equal chance to roll when you roll the mega rare table. If I'm understanding that correctly, I think
yeah,
Kodai and Elder Kodai is frankly just does not have a lot of uses. It does have some like
yeah,
Slayer, but like really not. And Elder is the best installed defense reduction weapon, which is very cool, but also like really. So I feel like finding a new home for those 2 items that maybe isn't that it makes them harder to obtain than like a Dragon Warhammer, but that alone I think would not only help the T-bow not be as horribly miserable to grind. I know you're maybe you can't say that considering how lucky you've been with that, but
well, I don't have it on the new hardcore yet, so we'll see.
yeah,
But
give it a couple more clears maybe. But
yeah,
no, I so that makes the T-bow grind a little bit nicer. It removes 2 uniques from the table that frankly aren't as desirable. Ancestral's still going to be super expensive, so that the prices are still like solid for Chambers of Zarek, and like I don't know, like for me, like Dins is another great example. Like you could probably move Dins to like a new Wildy boss, as crazy as that sounds, because that item essentially has uses in Colosseum. Sometimes if you want to do like the thing, whatever, like and Wilderness Prayer Altar, burying bones, like
yeah, I
that.
could see that.
Yeah, so I don't know. But I guess the reason we bring this up is because of the new boss coming out in the Blood Moon Rises. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it looks cool. Thoughts on
Maggot
the
King.
Maggot King? Yeah, very cool. So excited. Does it only have one? No, 2 uniques, right? The new Rancor for ranged and the flail. How do you feel about those rewards? Maybe summary, because I know you talked about a bit about them in your own video about it.
The bludgeon is just like crush claws, which like looking at it, they're not like super useful. I think they're okay. I don't know how exactly that's going to fall in progression. We'll see how like difficult the boss is, but they're pretty weak overall. Don't have a ton of uses, but they're like okay, like side grade to claws and other places.
I guess Fasani's would be the
But
use, right, on the Enrage phase.
yeah, yeah, it's really good on that, and that's like basically the only place it's bis, if I remember. So, but it's like okay compared to claws in a lot of places. So I don't know. We'll see. If it's fairly easy to get, I wouldn't hate that as a more common drop. Like I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I'm very interested because they're tuning it around the Fasani's difficulty, but they're making the item only good in Fasani. So it's like it feels like a weird choice there. But maybe Yama was supposed to be very, very challenging from what I remember too. So it's like who knows how it'll play out. But feels a little bit weird. Yeah.
I think it's gonna fall like we thought Fang was terrible before it came out, and then it's like, oh, but it's almost as good as Biss in like 20 places. So I feel like the Crush Claws are like almost as good as Claws at a lot of places, and I think they'll still be useful. If it's way harder to get than Claws, though, it'll feel a little weird. So we'll see.
I cannot imagine it being hard. Chambers of Zarek is a tough grind. I'm lucky I got the claws, but yeah. So surely it's not going to be right. I guess Burning Claws are the weird outlier here where like they're just really good and pretty easy to get. So maybe that's like we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm curious. I know that like we're going to need to see more Crush content, right? Like that's the big thing with Endgame is that there's just pretty much no Crush content. I was excited for Doom because I saw he had a Crush weakness, and then it's like, well, you don't melee him. So I'm like, okay. So eventually we're going to see more Crush content. Obviously, everybody's saying it's going to be the raid. So you're generally pretty positive about the Maggot King. Hopefully it plays out well. The items seem fine for what they are. Obviously the amulet is just a stat up increase. Leading into the raid, I know it's tough to call. We haven't even gotten the first poll here for some of the rewards, if I remember correctly. So like, what are you expecting from the raid? From just like hopium, like the best possible, thing for Gnomonkey for raids 4. What would that look like?
I would hope that solo is kind of like CoX, where it's like you need to approach it in a completely different way, but it's still like doable if you want to do that. And then like heavy team mechanics would be the dream. We'll see.
Yeah.
I wanted to be closer to Tob than TOA is the main thing. Like less solo mechanics that you can also do in a group if you want, and more like heavy team focus would be cool.
I'm very nervous about some of I think the raid's going to be great, frankly. Like I'm very critical of TOA, but I think that the main reason I'm critical of TOA is literally just because of the way it scales. Like 300s are insanely fun if you're doing them at the appropriate difficulty or like level of your character or whatever. 400s are okay. 500s are fucking miserable. Like it just scales really bad. And the fact that this raid clearly will not operate. Yeah, sorry.
I always have people come in my chat. They're like, "What do you hate TOA? Why?" I'm like, "Hey, what's the highest raid level you've done?" They're like, "I do 300s." I'm like, yeah, exactly. So once you push that raid level up a bit, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It just becomes so.
It's miserable. So fun at an early point, but yeah, later no.
Exactly. And it's funny because I remember watching your first ever TOA video, and you're so positive about it. You're like, "This is the best." So I'm like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
The war veteran pre-war kind of vibe, but I think like for raids 4, they're obviously not doing that. They're very apparently inspired by TOB coming into it based on what we saw on the blog. So very, very exciting for that. But the rewards I'm still very worried about. Obviously, we don't know much about them, but like my biggest point of criticism, as I mentioned a bit earlier, with the endgame in OSRS is how cannibalistic it has become. Like, very quick summary on my most controversial video is I felt like back in ye old days, the way endgame content was, we're talking like 2004, endgame content was like Barrows. And then in 10 years, Barrows was mid-game. Today, Barrows is early game. So the content still has relevancy for someone's progression, especially as an Iron Man, but it just has relevance at a different point in someone's progression. The same applies to Zulrah, frankly, right? Zulrah came out, it was the endgame at that point. And now it's more like mid to end game is where you would probably be hitting Zulrah. Maybe mid to late game is more accurate terminology there, right? I feel like there is content in this game right now that is just rigid, and that creates so many issues with power creep. Where I support power creep as a concept because you need to get more powerful in MMO. That's how you incentivize stuff. But right now, what's happening is we're seeing that Yama next situation. We're seeing what's happening with TOB, where the only item that scales is the only item that retains its value. And TOB still has that like quote unquote late game, end game facade with it, where people only go there when they've completed so much other stuff. So like it's losing value, but still has its quote unquote like high barrier to entry, thanks to being group content, but also just generally more difficult than content that would come before it in a roundabout sense. And this to me is getting worse and worse, where every new thing being added feels like it's eating at something else. Like the Eye of Ayak, just big bite off the shadow, right? Like it feels like
Yep.
it's getting a bit worse to me. And I'm really worried because on one hand, you need power creep to sustain incentives. And I feel like creative items especially are the coolest additions to the game. But on the other hand, I'm worried about what's going to happen to pre-existing content as a result. It's very not in old school RuneScape's nature to cannibalize existing content. That's my ramble about that. Do you agree?
And
Do you disagree? Yeah.
yeah, like when they added Nex, you could argue that like Torva cannibalized stuff too, but I didn't really see that as an issue because like I still saw, I feel like the exact same amount of bandos before and after that update because Torva was so difficult and like
Exactly.
punishing to get your hands on. I think it's an issue with like balance and drop tables and like rates of stuff versus the like difficulty. Oathplate was, I think, a big mistake where it's just like extremely strong for the difficulty that Yama, I feel like, is a step above Vardorvis. It's not easy, but it's not next level. It's not like raid level. It's not that difficult. And then the drop rate is pretty quick. So then it's like, okay, when it's better and easier to get than other items, it will always just be very cheap and like make those items cheap as well. Same thing with Mocha, like we were talking about, like you can get the drops early. That's what people do. And also they have an issue where like a lot of newer content, they allow you to get into that content with much cheaper weapons. We had the 2 demon bosses where Demon Bane is very, very strong with like Scobo and Mocha, and Purging Sapphire Emberlight on Yama being Biss. It's just like, it's insanely accessible to people. Like you need like 100 mil to be doing almost the same damage as like a 2 bill setup at these bosses, which means a lot of things are being botted like super hard. So I feel
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like the way you fight this is stop doing the like extremely accessible, like low gear requirements. Like these bosses, you should be expected to have good gear. Like you should get a benefit from having a scythe at these places, like that kind of thing. Maybe it doesn't have to be impossible without a scythe. That's not what I'm saying, but like it should be Biss. I feel like in these places that are endgame, and the rates need to be considered a little harder. Like they need to not make them like just super common or do something with them. I don't know. Make them less powerful if they're going to be this like easier to obtain.
I'm really glad you brought all that up because that's like I think we're really digging into this problem that I noticed that a few months back I talked to a couple of developers about it behind the scenes, and now I kind of brought it to, I tried to like make a video about it essentially, and now I'm talking to you about it, which is great. And everything you brought up is really true. And to me, the issues really start really coming into a head when I'm struggling to see how to incentivize certain sets of gear on new endgame bosses, when the more items that are being added to the game, the more like that. I always say the endgame of OSRS itemization with new items is like a cramped clown car, and we're just shoving more. Like, this is a new rapier that does 2 strength bonus over the old rapier. Like it's not even a max hit.
Yeah.
Like so at a certain point, there's so much like incrementality that eventually we're gonna get to a point where like there's so many ways, and they become easier over time. The game gets solved over time to obtain and get the level of power you need for a new endgame boss without, man, it's a complicated thing because like, as you pointed out, it's so easy to get those demon. These are mid-game Slayer mobs that you're doing like a quote unquote endgame boss with. And they're the best. And the same applies to Doom. Void Armor is Doom, right? Like you can do Void Armor.
Void,
Obviously,
yeah.
like Masori is a bit better, but like, yeah, Void Armor is perfectly fine. And how do you make Torva the barrier to entry? How do you stat check Torva? Defense is 2 RNG, so you can't rely on that. You can't rely on strength bonuses because, again, there's such a minor increase in the long run. Like, what do you do to incentivize top-end gear without only incentivizing mega rares? Because mega rares are disproportionately powerful to other items. That's what makes them mega rares. The scythe scales so much harder that with strength bonus. So, like, unless we just incentivize scythes, which I think would be bad because it's so rare and so expensive, and it's like the one thing, right? Like that's the one item. On the other hand, if we don't incentivize scythes, you go in with like the cheapest, most meme set, like Blood Moon and fucking mid game Demon Bane, right? Like it's just it. You
Yeah.
can't incentivize armor well enough because defense is fucked. And strength bonus is very incremental. You can't. I feel like it's hard to incentivize Scythe because it's the complete opposite of that. And where's that in between? Like, how do we make it so the new endgame boss doesn't require the previous one, but would really benefit from having done like it's 50% harder without the recent ones. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? Sorry for the rant.
Yeah, think like a Tob using a whip versus a scythe. That's like a 25% difference. Like you don't see these big. I think Scobo to Tebow at Mocha is like 8% or something.
Yeah.
Like that's not nothing. Like that's a deal, but like it's a much smaller gap, and that means just like bots can just like go crazy like super early with very little money. It's a problem. I don't know. What I was talking about with Nex, where like the utility of Tebow being useful to avoid damage is really, really cool. And I would like if they leaned into that more. I don't know exactly how you could do that. But if a scythe made it so like the boss is, I'm thinking like using a 5-tick weapon at Fasani versus a 4-tick that like lets you do the shadow step under, like that makes the fight easier. Like if you can do more of that kind of thing with the endgame weapons where they make you take less damage, or there's something smart you can do with them that makes it like the fight easier versus just like raw damage. I think that's a really smart like way to do it. I don't know how much of that they can even do. That's kind of a difficult thing to do, but
Yeah, like it's a really, really challenging thing because like you can only just ratchet up difficulty so much, right? Like if every fight just becomes a like a Doom Delve 8 like entry point, that not only alienates a lot of people, that also
yeah,
just makes a really binary encounter at the end of the day, right? Like you're just either doing it or dying. And then it's also that, and that, by the way, doesn't solve the problem, right? If like you can make the Radiant Oathplate contracts from Yama, but at the end of the day, the best gear helps you do them better and faster. But like, you're not like he's not gonna slowly chip damage you to death if you have a fucking shitty staff, right? Like, so it's like how do we incentivize like new mage gear upgrades over ancestral, right? The reason why I feel like that has not happened, like as opposed to Torva, which we've gotten how many upgrades over Bandos at this point, is because is because mage gear ancestral is so hard to get that like no like if a new boss came out that's Yama 2 but drops mage gear, ancestral not only just becomes completely irrelevant because not a single person is going to do CoX for ancestral because this new set is going to be better and comes from a 60-hour grind, not a 300-hour grind for a full set. Like, what do you do there? And that's my like really big concern because like mega rares it makes me so mixed on mega rares as an item, right? Like, on one hand, they do create these big power spikes that are not only satisfying, unique, and important, and you can create a mega rare only boss, I guess. But on the other hand, it becomes a standard to only have these items as like the signifier of how to create, of how to benefit from itemization, and every other item is just such a minor, barely noticeable increase that eventually, yeah, bro, why do you need Bandos? Why do you need Torva? Just go in Blood Moon. Who cares? You know, like it's one max hit, little homie, unless you have a scythe.
I think the thing they need to do is focus on making raid items like game altering. I think Toa did a really good job where it's like the items from Toa are all useful, maybe except the ward. Even the ward is pretty good. Most of them aren't incremental though. They're like the light bearer doubles your spec energy. The Fang is just like an insane, super accurate weapon, totally different from anything we've had before, that kind of thing. I think adding the reason you see like a lot of Tob upgrades falling off is that they were mostly incremental. It was Rapier is a little bit better than the Tent Whip. Sang was a little bit better than the Toxic Trident. Justy has a little bit more defense than Bandos, makes you a little tankier. And then Scythe of Verdict exist. And those are like the two like only items that are still useful because they were not just incremental. They're like a thing that you knew. Well, I mean, a Vernic's incremental, but like it's a massive stat difference. You kind of get what I'm saying. Like,
yeah. I think like
just doing tiny upgrades on stuff in raids. Like raid should be the place that you dump super interesting stuff in, super powerful stuff, that kind of thing, to keep it relevant a really long time.
Agreed. I've always maintained this. I want more interesting itemization to enter the game, especially at the end game when like you release the new hardest boss that's a 150-hour grind, and it's like a boots that give you 1 strength bonus. Not only does that not make me excited to go do the fight because I'm not getting literally anything but a collection log out of it, but like it's just lame. Like frankly, like it can't be that the coolest items happen in the mid game. Like to me, some of
Yeah.
the coolest items are at Ladle and Blood Moon with a full set. Those have the most noticeable and interesting item effects compared to like what, like, you know, increased slash bonus on Oathblade compared to, you know, a Scythe is really fucking cool, but compared to like Rapier or like any of these like chart, like the Sanguinesti has the same exact attack animation as the fucking Trident, barely does anything. Like it's just it. There's a level of not only just like coolness factor, but like game altering. Like to me, items, especially weapons, should always change the way you approach something, especially in the end game when you can't just do slowly 2-3 strength bonus increases with every additional item. But the unfortunate side to that, I think, is almost community driven, where a lot of the community is very dead set on OSRS being like, you know, KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? Like if it's not simple, it might be bad for the game. And to me, and this is where I kind of try to point it out in the video, where we're kind of rubbing up at the end of that. Like, I think there is a bad timeline in the next 10 years where a lot of old content loses a lot of relevancy and the game becomes really narrow for no reason at all because people are so dead set on, oh, do you want a new ring? And then it's upgrade over Ultor. It's going to give it 16 strength bonus now, guys.
Yeah.
16. Like, the Lightbearer is, I'm glad you brought that up because it's such a cool item. It's awesome. And I think future items should be more like the Lightbearer. In fact, I think it was Sebe who brought this up, where he's like, how would you feel about a additional ring slot that is just begotten to unique items like a Lightbearer? Obviously that's power creep, but like on its own, like having these unique items that drastically change the way you perceive the game and give you and open up new avenues and strategies is way more interesting to me than just a one max hit on a 100-hour grind, you know?
Yeah, I always want rewards to be simple in like they're easy to understand.
You
When
definitely am.
the Heka, when it was coming out with Toa, it took like it had like a 5-paragraph description in like every effect it had. And it's just like so hard for me to calculate, and it's so hard for any new player to understand like how to use it or how it works, that like you want to avoid that kind of thing. Lightbearer is one sentence. It's doubles your spec. Like,
Yeah.
I instantly understand what that does. But the effect it has is so like unique and powerful that it's like still game altering. Like that's the kind of reward you want to go for versus like you get 18 stacks of a super soul strike, and then like if it'll take from your health and it'll you know, like there's a place for that kind of thing too. But generally, if the item can be simple but change the way you approach the game, that's like the best rewards in the game, in my opinion. Those are like the best items and the most interesting.
Balancing aside, like just ignoring how, in my opinion, horribly balanced this weapon is, how do you feel? Do you feel like the Soul Reaper axe is too complicated, or do you feel like it's just the right amount of like complicated?
The Soul Reaper is complicated in like the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah,
In like a lame way.
yeah. I love the idea of building stacks and like expending them, but I feel like Soul Reaper is not only just like awful on the vast majority of content where it shouldn't be awful, but like it just doesn't work on like it. I would want to bring Soul Reaper to Fasani because it's a crush weapon, and there are like no good crush weapons unless you're talking about Inquisitor, Mace, you know, against Fasani. Like it's just it's in a weird spot. But like to me, like a builder spender type weapon is like a pretty decent like way to maybe incentivize a level of creativity in weapon design.
Yeah. The Soul Reaper axe is just like anytime I'm gonna use it, I have to factor in that I have to build it up first, and then if there's downtime at the boss, I'm gonna lose stacks. If I go to bloat with it and he gets back up and I have to do nothing for a while, I'm gonna lose stacks. If I do a Soditseg maze, I'm gonna lose stacks. The fact it's like anti-downtime weapon is really lame because so many bosses have downtime, so it feels like you can just never use this thing, even though it's strong. Like, I remember there was a point when I was CM speedrunning where I think it was before Oathplate that I was like, whoa, the Soul Reaper axe is actually BIS on Vanguard. It's actually like 1% better than Scythe. But I'm like, that's on paper, right? You're never gonna. Yeah. How are you gonna use that at Vanguards? They go down. You're gonna build up stacks. Like that's not real, but like in theory, it's good.
that was my exact same realization at Fasani's when I've been doing a bunch of Fasani's where like yeah, on paper, it's a lot better than my bludgeon, but like I need to maintain all my stacks on all the pillars, which is not only an obnoxious level of micromanagement, but like you need to be melee. And then what if a pillar, the active one, you get the flower phase when the active one is far away. So you start dropping stacks, so you have to mage it. Like it's the level of upkeep necessary on Fasani's as an example to keep the Soul Reaper axe relevant. I'm getting like similar kill times, like literally like almost identical kill times with the bludgeon, which tells me that like there's a bit of a mismanagement happening there with the way it's tuned and balanced, and it definitely needs some changes. But like conceptually, it doesn't work with the Soul Reaper axe. Okay? But like conceptually, that's like the kind of like twist, I guess, on an item. Like I always liked seeing them do this kind of stuff in leagues, right? Where you have the soul spear, for example, that was obviously
Yeah.
very broken, but like really cool. But stuff like that to me is an avenue where you can toy around with the complexity alongside with just maybe playing a bit more with attack speed. Like I don't know how to balance this. I know there's so many issues with it, but I would love it if every weapon wasn't just 4 or 5 tick. Like I don't know how you feel about that, but like I would love if that was the case.
It kind of is how they keep the game more accessible. Like if all the weapons feel the same, like it's easier to do content, and definitely there's like room for them to add faster weapons. I think people would struggle with those though. Like trying to figure
Yeah.
out how to use like a 3-tick melee at like Zarpus would be like, I don't know what I do here. You always see it with leagues with the weird attack styles. There's always like gotta be guides on how to do like Akka Butterfly with like a 2-tick weapon and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're totally correct. I guess for me, it's like that's a positive. Where like if I get a weapon and
Yeah.
it changes the way like a great example is actually Zarpus, where when you get a scythe, you're doing melee Zarpus. Like that's way better than zero defense blowpiping, from what I understand anyway. So like now you've kind of altered your perception of the fight. It becomes a higher skill ceiling for way more reward, right? You're doing so much more DPS on Zarpus now. And to me, like future weapons really I, like the worst way to me, and the next mega rare, and we can touch on this in a moment, would be implemented is if it's just like another big bonk weapon that hits really hard that has no like skill ceiling or consideration at all. Like if a level 3 conceptually, or like someone that bought their account can just pick it up and do more DPS than someone else, with literally by just camping it and do think no consideration, nothing, just hit Piety if it's a melee weapon, hit Deadeye if it's a ranged weapon, hit Augury if it's a mage weapon, and just camp it, that would suck to me. Like that to me would be the wrong way to go. But like I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't know if you disagree with me. Like I want a weapon that really pushes. Like if you're getting a mega rare, if you're earning it, you're already a pretty good player. You should be open to like adapting and learning new mechanics. That's half the fun of the game. And now it's not just the boss pushing you to do new mechanics, it's your build and setup and like general, equipment that you're wearing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, harder, like more expensive item or like rarer items that come from endgame being harder to use is pretty cool. I like that about the scythe in
Yeah.
Cobb, that it's like it's more challenging to use than a whip, but you get rewarded with damage for doing it. That's
And,
definitely a good play.
and like blowpipe is really hard to use, like really well on like high movement fights, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like blowpipe walking is really hard at like Zuck healers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I think that there's this thing where people don't understand how hard it is based on weapon speeds, but obviously there's a lot of issues with like, why don't we have a 3-tick melee weapon? A lot of people have, or a 2-tick melee weapon, right? But it's because strength bonus is just really, that's actually another point, right? Like I like stats in general, I feel like in OSRS, you start kind of bending a little bit and breaking a little bit the deeper in the game you go. How do you feel about like the way stats work, right? Like we have range strength, which is not used by the vast majority of items in the game. We have melee strength, which is just ubiquitous. Defense is kind of RNG. We have mages using percent damage for some reason. Like it feels very strange, especially with how it scales. But how do you feel? Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, also like mage working differently, like the way monsters don't use their defense stat anymore. Now they use their mage
Yeah,
level when
good point.
it's mage damage. Yeah, there's a lot of like confusing weird stuff going on with like the different combat styles for sure.
Do you feel like do you foresee down the line? And my prediction is yes, but but what do I know, right? So do you see down the line them potentially changing like itemization in the game, or even just stats, like the stat lines in the game, like maybe we're just removing mage percent strength, like we're doing something different. Range strength, we're making items work like melee strength, right? So there's more items with range strength, and we're making it scale a little bit differently, so the blowpipe doesn't get broken again. Like do you foresee that kind of thing happening? Maybe like to just kind of put people becomes a bit easier to understand and also gives more utility to future items and different kind of routes for itemization and stuff.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like the stats are really confusing to a lot of people. I see a lot of people get hung up on how useful like defense and prayer bonus are, and like they value those like different stats have different values.
Yeah,
Like strength bonus is not the same as defense bonus, but I see a lot of like newer players getting really confused by that.
agreed. No,
Um,
100%.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe if they made like strength bonus a big number, like
I
it's 10% is effective, but you get 10 times more. Maybe that kind of little thing would make it. I don't know. I don't know. There's definitely
the,
creative things you could do to make that kind of thing more accessible and understandable. But
when it comes to strength bonus, I had this idea. I don't know if I ever even said it in a video. Maybe I have, but it's so one of my biggest like complaints with very incremental upgrades is that sometimes they just have no value for you at all. Like sword boots, for example. But like the I had this idea where instead of strength bonus, you get a max hit every 4 strength bonus. Instead of it working that way, instead it's more of like an incremental like scale where like let's say you have like 10 0 strength, and if you have 1 strength bonus, you have a 25% chance to roll a max hit, 50 2 strength bonus 50% chance, 3 strength bonus 75% chance, and then a 4 strength bonus, it's guaranteed to roll a max hit when you roll that max hit. Like does that maybe that would maybe add some like it's very minor, but it would add maybe some psychological value to creating more
like there's a
incremental.
percent chance to get to that next max hit, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
I get you. I could see that. I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, you want
I don't think that has any major issues.
I feel like it's very minor, just a psychological thing. Um, and mage progression. Do you feel like mage progression in the game has some issues? Yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't. The shadow obviously is a big problem just because it's multiplying those stats, which is something that they're going to change soon. Apparently, we'll see.
yeah,
Rework how that works. Um, they've also been like adding elemental weaknesses, which I don't know. Generally, I don't really like that much
oh
because
really?
um, Magic's main damage source is powered staves right now, and that just doesn't interact at all with like elemental staves. So they've added this like new balancing lever, but you don't really ever interact with it for any reason unless you're like in early game, like you don't have powered staves yet. So you're using elemental spells still.
Yeah, that's my big criticism of elemental weaknesses as well. Where like the idea is great, it really is great, but power staves are not only kind of annoying. There's like 3 of them that have any value in the game, and that makes mage only have 3 points of progression at very vastly different increments. So you're either stuck doing whisper with a trident, which sucks, or a IAC, which feels like 30% better, right? Like it's a really
Yeah.
weird way that they balanced mage out because elemental spells are so damn weak, and they didn't want to shake the boat by making some bosses just like really easy with elemental spells. I guess Zulrah is probably the only one. So yeah, it's a really weird situation. I love the idea of elemental weaknesses. One of my like early suggestions when I saw them was that the weaknesses themselves should just be a label. Like this creature is weak to water, but based on the gear you have equipped, you can expand on those weaknesses. So I'd rather have the itemization that you're wearing influence the weakness rather than the weakness just be a static thing. So like that way, that gives them opportunity to have armor that you can really stack. And now you can, if you have a full elemental weakness like armor set equipped with an elemental weakness staff, with an elemental weakness ring, suddenly fire damage Warcath is not only good, it becomes really good and obtainable for a player that might, be going that mage route. But because everything's very static in their elemental weaknesses, it feels like they might as well not exist. It's like a bait. Like a new player might look at the wiki page and go, "Oh, he's weak to fire. Perfect." But like, bro, you're not using fire on Kefri. What are you doing?
No. I think at some point there'll probably be a rework and they'll like tie in powered staves to weakness, like make Trident water based or something like that. Maybe keeping just shadow neutral or something like that. I don't know. Because it doesn't really do anything right now. Like tying elemental weakness to like just the harm staff, and that's the only powerful weapon that uses it. And even then it's just never useful.
Yeah,
The other problem is just that if you're on the standard spellbook, you're losing damage because you don't have Thrall's Revenge. So it's like you're
exactly.
losing damage and utility, and
It's a
just not
it's,
great.
it's a really weird thing to untangle because on its concept or on its face, I love mage as like a utility skill, but I really don't like mage as a combat skill. So I've always been like, I wish there were some like alterations there because for as cool as the IAC is like as a weapon, it doesn't really fix the problem. It just adds like an additional element to the problem of just like having three. Now you have 3 items instead of 2 items. Like great, but what does that solve really?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
the last topic I want to really quickly touch on, and it's a bit of a swerve, so my apologies, but the last topic I want to touch on is just content creation. I talked to Soup a little bit about it. He was on the show recently, and I know you were part of the Gillenor Games. Congratulations on your placing there. It was really fun to watch. I know my friends and I were big enjoyers. It was you and Mammal. We were big rooting for you guys because you guys were kind of like the newbies, or I guess in many the outliers. So I just want to touch on content creation, your thoughts on it, getting into it. Like, I feel as though that content creation in RuneScape is really unique, very interesting, unlike any other MMO in existence. And you kind of inhabit both sides of the spectrum where you do the streaming content, but you also still create content on your YouTube channel. Sometimes it's just guides, other times it's opinion videos, and other times you're doing challenges like the No Pillar Coliseum. Like, how was it getting into that scene? Do you feel like the scene is like, just thoughts on the scene, I guess would be the question.
I used to do YouTube only as like a hobby, and I made like little guides, and I think I had like 20K subs for like a long time. Like I didn't really do it that often. I had a real job, that kind of thing.
Imagine.
And then I decided I wanted to make it into a thing that was not that. So I like full pushed for like streaming as much as possible. So I streamed like a lot of hours, and I was like trying to get good at the game. I was just doing Inferno speeds like constantly. It's the RuneScape community for like content creation is interesting. I feel like it's really saturated on like the YouTube side, where it's like there's a lot of like the people that do like series like Chunkmen and that kind of thing, and then like guides, and for the most part like that's about it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
the streaming is more so just like playing the game, which I really like. I like streaming a lot. That's like the main thing I put effort towards. My wife works on the YouTube channel for the most part, so she'll come up with a lot of the outlines or the scripts in general, and then like we'll work on it together, and then she'll post the video. So that's kind of her deal. So I've taken over the I like logging in and doing fun stuff and showing off, that kind of thing every day.
Yeah.
Versus YouTube, which is a little less like posting challenge videos and stuff doesn't do as well, but stuff that like hits a wider audience, like useful guides and that kind of thing, is more what people are looking for.
Yeah, that's you're correct. I think like for me, it's I'm lucky in that like I'm bit general content in that like I just touch on like video MMOs and stuff like that, but also obviously big OSRS videos as well. Like I make a lot of them too. And I feel like there's not a lot of people, or at least I felt, maybe I'm way off here, but I personally haven't found a lot of people doing video essays in the OSRS space. In fact, I can only think of Jimmy as the only one, and he does also general content as well. And even then, we had very different, like our videos are incredibly different. So I felt like comfortable in that like niche or whatever, or I feel comfortable in that niche or whatever.
Yeah.
But even then, like I get why people focus on series. Like it's an infinite pool of content, right? Like you can kind of go forever with those. When it comes to video essays, you're a one topic Andy. You got to keep going. Like you got to find something else to talk about. And I've always felt this way where I'm like, man, it's a finite pool for me. So it's tough. It's scary, but it's always been interesting looking into the OSRS scene on the outside, because from the outside, it's like the coolest and craziest MMO content creation space ever. Right, like just seeing like those series happening and all this stuff, all these creative ways to play the game. Like no other MMO even comes like 1/5 of the way there. There's a reason why the OSRS like content creation scene seems to like double or triple the general player base that plays the game. Like it feels like so like beloved to the point where other games are now taking inspiration from it. And as someone who's done a bit of both on your end, it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. Like do you feel as though like being a streamer and a content creator who's frankly your job outside of playing the game is giving your thoughts on the game and like offering your suggestions, having that like immediate line to you on stream is both a positive and a negative? And that the positive is people like your guide, I just killed Inferno, and you're like, fuck yeah, my guide helped, On the other hand, they hate you and they hate your opinions, and they're gonna come into stream and start flaming the shit out of you, right? Like, do you feel like that kind of opens you up to a bit more of like a headache in that regard?
Um, totally. I mean, there's certain things that are just like really annoying when they come up. Like always people like telling me I teach like the wrong pillar on Colo or something like that. Um, I think generally though it's helped me become like a more well-rounded creator and a person because like there's a lot of perspectives that I just used to like never consider. I was in my own kind of little like elitist bubble, and when Scurries came out, like I thought it was a crappy boss. Like, why are they adding this garbage?
Yeah.
But then you
Right.
like try different stuff and you hear other people's perspectives and their opinions, and you're like, oh, this is like getting people into the game really well, that kind of thing. So it helps me immediately like be humbled, but like I don't know, see a different perspective immediately that I usually am like not considering.
Definitely. When my friend and I were really new to the game, that group Ironman, and I when we were really new to the game, we obviously watched your videos and a bunch of other content creators, guides, all that kind of stuff, opinions, and we always heard your opinion when a new boss comes out. And our general take, and don't take this the wrong way, is if Gnomonkey hates it, we're probably gonna love it. Because that's the stage of the game we were at. So like when you made your Araxor video, right? Like you're like, yeah, it's kind of easy, kind of whatever. And we did it, and we're like, this is the best boss. We're like, fucking love the fight. It's so cool. I still love the fight. But like so it's funny. It was funny to like see like that kind of like differing perspective just based on where you're. Because yeah, probably going into Araxor with full ink and like a fucking sight, like, bro, like you're killing it in like 30 seconds, right? But like for us,
Yeah.
where we were like we had the boppers and blue moon or blood moon, it was very different vibe. Like it was a completely different feeling doing that fight and just learning the step under. I thought was a fucking awesome mechanic on Araxor. I really loved that on Araxor specifically. But yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely. And I guess in the content creation space, the streaming space, how did you grow your stream? Like, I feel like streaming is such a challenging thing to grow. Like, obviously it's the dream for a lot of people to have a successful stream. It feels like such an instantly gratifying way to earn income while also doing the thing you love. But like growing your stream, like bouncing out of that like 2 to 5 viewer range, like how do you do that?
Well, to be fair, I did YouTube for a while, so I was able to really easily just be like, hey guys, go check out the stream that I'm starting to do, and then like push it that way. So I was in the like 10 to 20 viewer range for maybe a week, but I broke out of that pretty quick just because I had a bit of a following beforehand. But there was like probably like a year I was like 50 to 100 viewers at most, so quite a bit smaller. It's I don't know exactly what I did right, but I put in a lot of hours. I try. One of the things people tell me is that I have like a positivity in the streams where like I don't. If somebody tells me they just got their Inferno kit with my guide, I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm never gonna be like, woo, that's the 10th person today that's told me. And it would be
Yeah.
it's really easy to think that sometimes, like, oh, I'm tired today and I just don't care. But I try to make people feel good in my streams. I don't know the exact word for it, but I like try to make people feel welcome and engage with like everybody if I can. Try to read everybody's messages if possible, even if the chat is going pretty fast.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that when I watch your streams too, especially when big new content releases. It's always fun to watch you push, deep delves or whatever it may be, Yama contracts. Like seeing all the crazy contracts. For as much as I am, and I was extremely critical of the contract system. I just really don't like the concept of the hardest content being just buy-in content. It just feels really weird to me. Like not like you don't have to buy it
Yeah.
to complete it, but like buy it to try it. Feels really bizarre to me. When it's just like cosmetic stuff. Like I feel like it'd be really cool to just allow people just make the hardest possible fucking thing and just allow everyone to rip it, and just see what happens. I think that would be the more ideal place because now I feel like there was a level of conscious balancing that goes into like, okay, well, it costs this amount, so maybe we shouldn't make it this hard. Like that maybe that's not how they design it, but that's always the impression I get, and it feels weird to me, like if that's how you design the aspirational content. But whole different thing. Awakeners orbs, hate those things too. I, but yeah, so I definitely have noticed that about your stream 100%. Specifically about positivity is, so I did like a big short arc in RS3, just trying the leagues out last year when it came out. Last year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, last year when it came out. I know you did a little bit too. Obviously, the sentiment toward RS3 is incredibly negative in the OSRS community, both for reasonable and, in my opinion, incredibly unreasonable things.
Yeah.
Just misinformation constantly about the game, which is frustrating. But like, I obviously heard about all that coming into it. I was hesitant but excited to check it out. I ended up, it has a lot of problems, but I ended up really enjoying a lot of the stuff, especially the PvM. I got really deep into the PvM in the game. And now the game is changing, right? A lot of changes are happening to RS3. I know you called them out in one of your videos. Like,
Yep.
how do you feel about that? Like, I know obviously exciting, but like, what do they need to do to get a Gnomonkey RS3 stream that's not sponsored? Essentially, was what I'm asking.
Well, I think they just recently added Quest Helper. That's a pretty big deal. They have like, I think like 150 quests. It's not
That's it.
complete or anything, but like they're making some good progress. I think they're old schoolifying it quite a bit, like adding a lot of they're working on plugins and stuff in general. So they're trying to bring some of the stuff that people like about old school to RuneScape 3. And they also cut down on the dailies quite a bit. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than it used to be. They're doing a lot of the right stuff to get it going in the right direction, I think.
I called that out in my video too. I'm like, man, the dailies, especially during leagues, like what the fuck? Like, it was just crazy. It was the hourlies, dailies, weeklies, monthlies. It's just insane to me that. So I'm glad. Yeah, I think they cut out like the vast majority of them, like 90% of them gone. I talked to a couple developers behind the scenes about it. Very happy about that, especially because I hate that kind of stuff. So really happy about that. And eventually, you know, I think my buddy and I are like, yeah, toward the middle of the year, I think we might give it a rip. After Blood Moon Rises is done, after we're done with the boss, the only real thing we're really looking forward to at that point is Raids 4, which is probably going to be like end of the year or even early next year. So like, we have some time to play around and see how deep we can go. Because I think the combat and the PvM in that game is quite good. I know they recently did a huge combat changes, like another EOC tier kind of thing, but I had a really good time just doing all the bosses. I think they're really cool. So it has its own separate identity in that regard. So I was always like happy, I guess, to see other big, not to say I'm a big content creator, but like big content creators like you and Foe, like be relatively amicable to it. Because there's no reason, in my opinion, now that we're playing the best version of RuneScape, arguably ever, to be so negative, right, about it. Like you want it to be good. There's nothing bad that happens with both versions of the IP being successful, you know?
I generally, like, back when I started streaming, I was in these circles with like the best players, and we would talk about strategy and how to go faster, and it would also bring this like super brutal negativity on like any update that is not something I interact with. Like if something is not, another update without them fixing Zuck tasks for Turiel, like, oh great, joy. Like I was pissed about like everything.
Yeah.
Like for no good reason. I think a lot of people get into these circles like I was in, where like you kind of just have this like very one-minded mentality where like the game is this way and nothing can ever change and we can't. I would encourage people, if you feel like you're in that situation, maybe like I don't know how you can be like just like open your perspective. That's what I did. I started playing a hardcore, which was a totally different way of playing, and I'm like, oh, all of this content plays a lot differently if you're on an iron, and like it was really interesting. I think more people would benefit from giving other stuff a shot.
Yeah. And that's why they should offer subscription bundles so people can try an Ironman out for less money.
Yes, do that. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. The last very small final question. I ask this to everybody who partakes in the show. If you were God, the RuneScape God, and you could snap your fingers and change anything about the game, as like from big to small, you can snap your fingers, EOC and OSRS. Like you could do that scale of change with no development time, anything like that. Just one change to the game, the most important one. What would it be and why?
There's a lot of ones that come up for like a little engine change that I would love, and that would probably break. Okay, here's a good one. And this would utterly destroy the game if they fix this. I hate when you use a ranged weapon and you click something, and there's an obstacle in the way. The game paths you as if you're going to go melee it. So it runs you to the nearest tile as if you were going to go hit it with a melee weapon. So what that means is when you're across the room at like Kefri and you're trying to shoot the arcane, it'll run you all the way in a square around Kefri for like 5 game ticks instead of just forward 1 tile to shoot it.
Right. That's a good point.
My dream engine change would be just make it so like it passed to the optimal tile every time you like attack or do something. It would break a ton of methods and it would do horrible damage, I'm sure, but it's always really frustrating to me. It's like when that doesn't work properly and I'm like running around like a chicken with my head cut off because the game is like, that's what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it would break. The only thing I'm sure there's multiple things, but would it break like 1/0 ohm and mage for the dragging because it drags 1 tile ahead of where you would want to be, or like
Yeah, it would
optimal?
break like shadow. I think it would work fine for mage because you'd still like regular like mage styles, but like the methods that go to the bottom of the room, like shadow running, I think that would utterly be destroyed.
Okay.
Maybe new methods would pop up that would work anyways. Who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably why that would never happen. But I would love it. That would be nice.
It's a small change, but it does definitely it would definitely change the feel of the game. Like, you know, like it would be as if they patched it so if you had a two tile weapon like a halberd, you don't step into melee range or into 1 tile range if you hit from a 3 tile range, right? Like
Yes,
that would
dude,
change
the
something.
range dragging on halberds is so annoying for sure.
Yeah. Like I learned both in TOB when I learned it, like I only learned TOB like a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I got like 100 KC, um and I did like I learned it with Noxious Halberd and I learned it with Whip. And there was a point where I'm like, it's easier with a whip to me because I feel like Noxious Halberd, you can like fuck yourself with a Noxious Halberd by just like a misclick. And I guess you can with a whip, but it's much easier to get in a cycle with a whip because you're never needing to drop a tick, right? So it's like it's a very weird thing there. And I think partly is because of the way that range kind of works weird. Like Zebak, you know, when you're like 11 tiles instead of 10, you're like shit, you know what I mean? Like that could really fuck you up. Yeah. So yeah,
I'm planning to make a guide on P2 Nally soon-ish, so hopefully I can help some people. I know a lot of people struggle with that. It's really awkward.
It's like
it shouldn't be too bad.
You could just use 2 tiles. I mean, unless you're doing hard mode, you can probably just use 2 tiles. But like, you have to just get. It's a very different kind of rhythm because it's not one that's for the rhythm, the cycle, I should say, on the whip. Even if you drop a tick, is like generally fine because it's so easy to be in cycle on Verzik of the whip because you have 3 ticks to be in cycle. It's not perfect. Well, the Noxious Halley, it feels like you can drop a tick more often, like 2 ticks instead of 1 more often. So it's hard. It's almost like it's like Zarpus in some ways, although maybe less dangerous, like with scything.
It's the exact same as Scythe Zarpus.
Yeah.
So, which is good actually because it teaches you how to do that while you're doing a boss in like a safe way because you're not in melee distance. I think it's really, really good to use an ally at Verzik. It is awkward, but
okay. So you're I know the Weeder Raids is like anti Nally on Verzik, so you're the
that's
opposite.
a whole thing.
You're pro Nally. That's valid.
Saildor is good on it's like better on some of the bosses, but Nally is better than Saildor in a lot of cases because it's slower, mainly on P3 because you save so many ticks because of it being slower and it having that extra range. That it's the only weapon that you can tank with and lose no ticks, which is really cool. So it's pretty good.
Really? How does that work?
So like when you would lose a tick to like stepping under, you just step like 3 tiles away and just like hit it from a tile away while she attacks. So like you can make it line up.
You don't have to step under it at all because it's a halberd, right?
Yeah, right? You'd be dragging. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yep. Okay, I for some reason didn't even think about that, but that's totally true. Yeah, it's
pretty cool.
Good to know. Next time I get back into TOD to farm that scythe, you know, I can try that out and wipe my team. You know? Yeah, I mean that's all we got. We actually went through the vast majority of topics we had, so I'm very happy about that. Yeah, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I thought it was a great conversation about PvM itemization. We kind of touched on a whole bunch of different stuff. I'm sure there's even more we haven't on. So I really appreciate you coming on. I hope you had a good time. And you're always again invited to join again for sure.
That was awesome. I thought that went super well.